Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Occult Exploration Society live here on Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined today by my good friends, Dion and Ryan. How's it going, guys?
Hello, hello.
Oh, I think you've just come on the internet. Sorry, one sec. Just started talking to me in the background again. Hello, everybody. That's a great way to start, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of fun. It's a really cool little tune. Lady Carrie's Dompe, for whoever was asking in the chat. It's an early English tune, one of the first recorded pieces for harpsichord, and it's anonymous. We don't know who wrote it. And I just thought it was cool because it's kind of a jazzy, almost modern sounding piece for something so old, really fun. All
Very
right,
nice
but
stuff.
today we're here to discuss more Dragon's Tongue, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be getting into the depths of it. Each of us has a presentation, and we're also hoping our friend Neil Nosik Informant can be joining us soon, and he will be going over some of the PGM with us, which is going to be a lot of fun. So, Dion, why don't you get us situated with this idea of the Dragon's Tongue, what we've been talking about over these last several episodes, and what we're going to get into today. And then, Ryan, you can go over yours.
Awesome. Well, first of all, trigger warning. We might talk about weird stuff in antiquity where people have sex, take drugs, and do crazy stuff. Also, we don't advocate this. We don't want you to try snake venoms at home or do any of this crazy stuff that we talk about. So this is antiquity, which is different than modern culture. They did wild stuff. We're talking about secret languages and ancient animals. Theoretical animals at that, dragons. A dragon could be symbolic of a shaman or a king, a temple guardian, someone that guards relics, a person of power, a person that's an oracle. It could be a mythical creature that has amazing powers, or it could be a serpent, serpentine energy, snakes, snake cults, and snake worship, and how this all ties together with communication, secret languages, nonverbal communication at that. So yeah, let's have some fun.
That's a great overview, yeah. And we're also, the Dragon's Tongue, what inspired this was going over specifically the PGM. And we were looking at that combination of Greco-Roman and Egyptian imagery coming together in that melting pot that we see around the 2nd century Alexandria. And this produces what we know as the charketeres, or the characters, these kind of mysterious forms of language, something that Iamblichus calls this approximation of the ritual, and contained within these characters is the totality of the theurgic rite. And these are the unutterable names of these deities, of gods that can't be spoken. So we're also getting into this mystical, magical invocation. And we've also been looking at a lot of magical armor, right? All of this seems to be too with the dragon tongue related to initiation into the rites, magic armor. We talked about Athena wearing the skin of Medusa. We talked about the initiates having the snake in the breast or the bosom or the colpos, which could be the woman's genitalia. And you're getting into all of this kind of mystery cult, drug, and magical performance rites for protection against demons, against fire, against negative stuff, right? What do you think, Ryan?
The first thing that comes to mind is something that was alluded to a little earlier, which is that it's a whole body of knowledge attached to the dragon. It's not just one thing or two things, but a whole body of knowledge. It's often called the serpent knowledge or the dragon knowledge, this occult stuff. Why? Well, you can see for yourself that in most of the symbology, the dragon turns up as some symbol par excellence for communicating the actual root of all this stuff, of all this strange occult, ancient magic. As you said, drug rights and sex and drugs and rock and roll is what it is.
Right. And it just becomes we see this image of the serpent, right? And the Ouroboros, it's so essential to the oldest forms of magic as this protective seal. In all of these magical seals, from the most ancient to even the grimoire tradition, you will see these snakes inscribed, tattooed with the names of God, right? As a form of protection. And it goes back to the Egyptians drawing circles in the sand, and they would call this searching for Osiris, right? And it even goes to those the Agathodaimon in the Gnostics, and those we see millions of these gems all across the Mediterranean with that symbol of Chenubis or the Agathos daimon. And it's all related to this magical protection, this power of not being hurt by all kinds of things, you know, mostly diamonds.
I tend to believe that's because the serpent is a symbol of the life force within time. So if you're bounding something off within a circle, then you're bringing it into creation. You're having it manifest. You're making it a solid thing in this mortal coil, rather than this realm of ideas, this immortal place where time doesn't exist, but all things happen all at once, forever, never were. It's this impossible paradox of a realm where everything comes from. And to make it real, you've got to symbolize that somehow. And that's done through that serpent.
Right. That's a really good way to say it. You know, and you see this constantly with this idea of also you'll see it's usually not just, often you'll see the Ouroboros, but then you'll have the serpentine staff, right? Which is a straight staff or sometimes a needle that goes through the circle. And that's when, like you were pointing out, the circle becomes a womb. It becomes that chaos gap. It becomes that Heka, right?
Two different types of time there. You've got cyclical time, the feminine time, and then you've got the masculine time, which is you know, everyday time as we have it. A cyclical time would be something like a year or a month or whatever it'll be.
Exactly, right? We see this again with how in all of the mythology, right? This idea of Bacchus and adoration of Venus, where Bacchus or Saturn is that ever dividing point, that infinitely small dividing point, right? Even Crowley uses similar iconography, but with different deity. And then Venus is that, or Aphrodite Urania is that ever expanding stellar sphere, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we're getting the two forms of time, but there's still time. They're still both snakes, right?
Yeah, I suppose. Shall we crack on with it? Because I'm fearing that we're going to start getting into explaining it too far rather than it being a mystery.
All right. So we're going to start with your presentation here, Ryan. So let's go.
Superb. So I thought what would be fun would be to start with the original dragon myths. Myself and Snappy were just discussing before the podcast began that some of these myths are so old that they crossed a land bridge to Australia and became the rainbow serpent myths over there. So, you know, this is a long time ago. I would like to say 20,000 years, but the truth is I don't know. A long time ago. And these myths all share something alike. It looks like they've all come from South Africa originally. And they all seem to be bound up with the weather, or certainly with water. What is the mainstay of the myth? Well, it's that a serpent or a dragon guards the water. Simple as that. It comes in lots of forms, but seems to be particularly bound up with the weather. So I'm imagining it's cloud systems rolling, you know, difficult weather, not even difficult weather. Epic weather is coming in, and it rolls in, and you're hearing the growls and the crackles, and you're seeing these serpents of energy go through the skies, and then all this life force, this semen of God, as it were, the rains from above shower down and fertilize the land. So people either loved or hated that dragon, but that's how they saw it, as this coiling thing in the sky. Now it's reeks of polysemy and shamanism, this kind of a tale, because okay, yeah, you can explain it that way, and it's fun to explain the weather that way, but there's always more to these things, and as we go through the presentation, I hope to show some of this dragon knowledge. So if
Well,
anybody
I
got
also
anything?
this makes me think of some of the stuff that I've heard Carl Rock talk about. I can't remember if I've read this or I heard him in a podcast, but he was talking about the mushrooms. And he was saying that a lot of these lightning myths and a lot of these stories about the skies drawing down lightning are related to the psilocybe related mushrooms, because when lightning strikes, they'll often bloom.
Absolutely.
So this would be a sign when there was a great storm. After the storm, the shamans would go searching for the
Yep.
psilocybin related strains of mushrooms.
And I will say that shamanic modality of mushrooms, i.e., when you're in there and under there, that underworld's very watery. Mushrooms themselves have a very watery modality of function. You're kind of drawn in to the depths, and then you wash back up on the tide, and then you go in again, and it's very the whole feeling's very underwater. Certainly, the underworld of the ancients was seen as being under the waters. So that's the waters above. So if we want to go on to the next slide. So straight away, we've got a storm god here. So we can relate this to Zeus or Jupiter or some of the similar Yahweh character. So we've got these waters above and these waters below. Well, that goes all the way back to Sumeria, when it was the bitter, salty water below and the fresh, pure, sweet waters above. And you've got to think of the way that the ancients saw the world, that there was almost like the stars were holes in this firmament where the water was leaking through. And you've got the underworld, you've got the actual sea, and the underworld's under the sea, where the sun goes at night, that goes under the sea. So we've got these layers of reality. And each of these can correspond to the psyche. Obviously, the heavens is some super consciousness. You've got the firmament, which is day-to-day existence on the earth in the midworld. The underworld's obviously dream life and these shamanic realms that you go into. Now, it occurred to me that this weather god that eventually kind of separates and becomes characters like Marduk and Tiamat. Marduk's this Jupiter character, this Zeus character, lightning storm god. And so is Tiamat, which is his counterpart, this feminine counterpart. Well, the waters are feminine, be it the actual waters or the mystical waters. They are one of the feminine elements. So with Marduk and Tiamat, this chaos dragon, he cuts up Tiamat and makes the world from it. Well, it's just the same as the rains coming down and growing things. It's this creative energy somehow brought down to the earth. And we can see that this is still true, because by the time that we get to something like a modern version of the myth, that dragon is still separate, but now there's a princess to save, who obviously the feminine, the waters, it's these same motifs. So we're not just talking about the weather falling down, we're talking about some mystical representation of connecting to a sacred feminine, this extra feminine, which is the shamanic state, deep trance, meditation on loads of crazy drugs. And I also want to say that this waters above is this kind of creative power, which you could say is ruled by, I'm going to call it Jupiter, just because I like to use the Roman tradition to communicate it better to most folk. You know, Jupiter is more than Zeus and everybody else. So we've got this Jupiter ruling the waters above. Then Jupiter kind of also rules the zodiac. Jupiter's the king of the gods of the seven, and Jupiter's also got these chthonic aspects. Well, what is it about all these things? Well, they're all the weather. You know, the zodiacs, the cosmic weather. What's the weather today? Well, it's this arrangement of things in the sky. There's a weather, the actual meteorological weather, where, you know, we need that water to grow the crops. And then there's also an internal weather. How are you feeling? What are you doing? This internal expansive Jupiter that rules the emotions. So it's the creative spirit, this creative thing, through layers of reality, through, you know, it's condensing down, and there are these different aspects to it. But essentially, it's the guy, it's the idea of call it a deity or the archetype of the change and the fate associated with that change in whatever realm it'll be, i.e. the weather.
That's amazing. And you know what? I just keep thinking, okay, we're going to get into this deeper when we go into the PGM, but I'm sure you guys are both familiar with the great giant, the storm giant, Typhon, who is an anguipede. So he has snakes for legs or dragon legs. Sometimes he's actually described as a hurricane. Sometimes he's described as this fire-breathing anguipede giant.
Typhoon.
Exactly, right? And he's this storm god and that has to be slain by Zeus, right? And when he's slain, he turns into these animals and takes off to Egypt. It gets all sort of wild, right? And he's the father also of the winds, the harpies. Lots of dark magic associated with this kind of serpentine energy. And again, we're getting into this father god versus the monster, right? That Zeus has to protect us from that, giant serpent, just as we saw in the Mesopotamian.
Yeah. And
what do you think,
I want to
Leon?
say that a dragon to this extent is an alignment. I'm starting to realize it's an alignment of energy. That's the archetype of a dragon. It's energy brought to heel and lined up to do something. So at its most, at nature's most potent, it's lightning and thunder. Do you get me? So that's what it's saying for me. Sorry, Dion.
All good. Loving the presentation. Love it. Keep going.
I will. Do you have anything on that, Snappy?
No, I think you're absolutely right. The lightning is that, I just think about in the Vedas as well, right? You see the character of Indra and his club, his hammer that draws down the lightning. And this is, again, that king type energy, that emperor type energy. And this is that force of power, the strongest force of power that man could wield, right?
Absolutely. Well, Thor and his lightning hammer, which is clearly an analogy for Amanita muscaria. So that, we'll keep on seeing this energy source, mushroom, the sky, and a few other things that I don't want to reveal quite yet. If we could go on to the next slide, please. So not only is the dragon associated with guarding the water, guarding the waters, but also eventually guarding gold underground. Now, this might come from miners, ancient miners going under the ground and finding bits of dragons in dinosaur bones and such. And where you're going to find that? Well, it's next to the gold in the ground that you're mining for. So, yes, there's this, but also we see dragons in all these myths, and they end up in places like alchemy, which uses this same myth of a dragon in a cave guarding the gold. Right at the bottom, we can see from Thomas Vaughan, the famous, the noted alchemical drawing of the magician's invisible mountain. So,
and notice that it is also an Ouroboros in this particular
yes.
version, right?
And means exactly what we were talking about a moment ago. And it's I'll just note that it says in there, unless like a child, nothing. It's got a chap sat on a pile of gold surrounded by the dragon.
Yeah,
this one is
This one is so beautiful, and it has everything that you could possibly want in an alchemical drawing, basically. Because look, you have that ritual altar table in the center as your middle path. You have the goal as the ascending of the mountains. You have the moon and the feminine on the right with the stars, and then on the left you have the solar deity, right? And you have this cycle going. It's probably a Pisces, a Pisca something, right? If it was blown up, I imagine.
Well, I do think it's drawn to that pattern that I discovered, but we don't need to talk about that today.
It
get far too complex.
But it's the beautiful stuff.
Again, I don't want to get into. I could decode that for you now, but I don't want to. I will note that one of the angel there on the left is holding a fiery sword, which we know keeps Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. But we'll get into that. So if we go on to the next. So I was saying that dragons are an alignment of power. Here we have the white English dragon and the coolest flag in the world, the Welsh flag with the Welsh dragon on there. That stands for two lines of power. That's the Anglo-Saxons with the white and the Britons with the red dragon. So again, that is still the. I wish that was still the English flag, but that red dragon there is absolutely the Welsh flag to this day. And left of that, we've got dragon lines, as they're called, or the ley lines. So I'm just reinforcing the fact that in whatever form it's in, the dragon is an alignment of power. It's the power lined up, ready to go. You know, it's not the car with the engine turned the wrong way, the petrol tank's not quite fitted, the axle's got a grind in it. It's everything ready for a race, as it were. So I'm just showing two further analogies of why it's a line. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean like a masculine straight line, but aligned would be the word. In China, that the dragon, in colloquial terms, is still used for your personal power and motivation. Oh, the dragon's not lined up today. I've not enough dragon in me, they say. And when they're feeling good and everything's chipper and let's go, the dragon's there. I've got my dragon's full today. So
Beautiful.
yeah. Next slide, please, unless you have something. So dragons and time. So on the left, we have the, well, would you like to talk about the egg on the left? Anyone?
Oh yeah, for sure. So, yeah, we have the Orphic
Let
egg.
Snappy go.
Right? You have the Orphic egg, right? And of course, the centerpiece, the egg, is representative of that fertility. That this is the snake is Eros, and it is crushing the egg, which will then give birth to Fanes, give birth to creation, right? So this is when you get these two forms coming together. It's it's necessity, ananke, right, with that unlimited time, that chronos, right? Chronos. So it's ananke and chronos in one single symbol, right?
Time and inevitability, yeah.
Time and inevitability. And so this comes, only thing earlier than this is the chaos gap itself, the womb, from which this comes, the first forms. But these are even before form itself, in essence, right? In the Orphic hymns, these are coming before even true form. These lead to Fanes, which is that representative of all form, right? As that intersexed and also animalistic being that is all of everything together, right? But it's showing you really what this is supposed to be. Is you also see this in the Indian traditions as well, in many versions. But with them, instead of an egg, you have the pillar. You have that pillar of fire. You have the lingam of Shiva, which is representative of that timelessness, unchanging time, right? That yogi in perfect meditation that has to be woken up by what? Parvati, right? The lover, the divine feminine, that Shakti, which then arouses that energy of Shiva and produces the pillar of fire. And then that dance then comes together and you get the unfolding of creation with the Nataraj, you know? And these two figures together, we also have that Fanes again, the Adranahari Ishvara, right? Which is that.
And I will also say that cosmic analogy eventually, especially certainly the way you just described it, ends up back in the body again in these kind of tantric kundalini traditions, that your microcosmos is a reflection of that greater cosmos, the macrocosmos.
Absolutely. And
I will note that egg is upside down. If gravity were to have anything to do with it, or the human mind, that egg wouldn't be that way around. But we'll come back to this later. So this serpent being a symbol of no before time, but these things that need to come together for time to happen and for the universe to happen. And it's the serpent in this context is a dualistic creature. It's both masculine and feminine. It's masculine in its phallic shape, but it's feminine in the fact that it can take so many different shapes. It's masculine in the fact that its head looks like a penis, but the second it opens its mouth, it looks like a vagina. It's also got, as part of the whole serpent cult thing, you're going to have poison and medicine as part of this, like the dote and the antidote, and altered states and things like that. So that's like this hypercosmic serpent. Now, if we bring it down to the earth a little, in the actual sphere of the heavens, we get Draco right at the top of this, the cosmic egg, which is the world. The world to the ancients was everything they could see. They thought there was a shell around everything, and then you get other shells within that, and then the earth is stationary at the center of that. So we've got this serpent and egg thing. You can say that serpent and egg is a hypercosmic version of the soul of the world, the anima mundi, which again is a serpent around an egg, and shows this kind of Abraxas-like view of the world, this kind of Gnostic, the good God and the bad God, the positive and the negative, the masculine and the feminine, working together to force the world into motion. You know, Abraxas makes you eat and sleep and have to breathe and have to procreate. And it doesn't matter if you don't like doing it, you are doing it, else you'll die. Sorry, Snappy.
Right. I was going to say, right. And Abraxas takes us back to the same thing we were talking about in the intro, that Chenubis, that figure who is the snake lion, right? This is the same image. It's the same figure, just seen through that Gnostic lens, right? This is such a primordial image, right?
It's time again. That lion's head is the momentary time, the time that's always really here. And the serpent time is kind of cyclical time, the fate of the heavens whirling around your body. This positive, negative, what's good for you with fate might be bad for your neighbor, kind of thing. You know, the hurricane blew my farm over. Oh no, mine didn't get blown over. It's not so bad for me. That kind of an idea. So we've got this dragon of fate that's circling the heavens. And if we think of a lot of the models for the universe as it was, like say the Nordic version, you get a tree and then eventually that terminates with an eggshell around it and a serpent going around it. It's all the same stuff. So it's this idea of that the energy from the beginning of the universe now come into time, now made hermaphroditic somewhat, but there's a masculine and feminine there at least. It might not be completely split off yet, but the masculine and feminine is embodied by this serpent's dual nature. We all know about dual serpents, but we'll get to that on the next slide. Right, so here we got like Ion Fanny's this kind of character, and he's got all these symbols of time around him. He's got the four winds around the four mega epochs around him. Then we've got the time embodied by the zodiac, cyclical time, and he's got this serpent wrapping around him, which is the time we were just talking about. Again, cyclical time, but fate. It's particularly related to the 7 planets. And then we've got a lion's head in the middle for momentary time. And we can see he's come from this Orphic egg. If we look to his feet and above his head, just like Mithras, he's burst from the Orphic egg. So it's time. Lots of different versions of time, all embodied by that guy. And I've illustrated on the right kind of the idea that they had. You could think of the serpent coming back on itself, being like this infinite time, but within time going on forever, but time's got a beginning and an end to it. Time's got an arrow to it at least. And then we've got this. I've actually put a snake on a line there where you can see lots of coils, and it says male and female, as if there was a masculine beginning that's hunting for the feminine ending at the end of time. So this is the concept that they've got of it, and where it coils, you could see as the planets of fate, of this energy wrapping back on itself and causing resistance. And this ultimately are the laws of metaphysics and the laws of your conscious embodiment in this animal creature that we are. That actually made sense, I think, didn't it?
No, totally, it made sense. And this is one of the things too you'll see with a lot of these mythologies and these deities. They're interconnected, and you'll have a masculine version and a feminine version, and sometimes they'll be out of time with each other. because they're constantly in this chase, but then all of a sudden they connect in places like Elysium. The perfect example of this is Medea in Achilles. This is the same force represented by once it's the masculine and another time it is the feminine going through those cycles, you know, and then they come together in harmony and love in Elysium, in that ionic life.
And I've written that, I think I've written that. Did I put sex force? Because it kind of is that. It's that desire and want for uniting that happened because the universe could split when time and physicality began, but that it desires itself to be reunited. And so this attraction and repulsion is the universe. That's how the universe works. So there's an entire metaphysic bound up in this.
Exactly, right? Because we have a duality of story as well. On one hand, you have the great romance, right? You have perfect example of this would be Krishna and Radha. It's that eros of distance, unrequited love. They dally and they love each other, but it can never be consummated. It can never be fully engaged in the earth. You know, they're forever chasing. But then on the other hand, you have that extreme repulsion, that ever fighting, right? And you see this with these absolute virginal deities, you know, or with these saints. A perfect example of this would be Oscar Wilde's Salome, where you have the figure of Glykon, who is representative of that virginal moon and refuses that sexual mother energy of Salome, even as she demands, I will kiss you upon the mouth. And then when he refuses, she takes his head, right? It's that to violence or to love. These are that force of Aphrodite is both that repulsion and that attraction.
Yep. And they are the only two directions in the universe when you think about it, towards or away. Everything else is left and right, up and down. They don't mean anything out there other than this human experience. We have towards and away from.
Right. And so much of the myth, like we harp on this middle path, but this is what they're trying to get at. When you engage in these extremes, then you bring that violence. It's like by being that virginal energy, Glykon sealed his fate, you know, because he's now requiring that absolute opposite, you know, and if he had pursued love, it would eventually have to connect in love, you know?
So another thing I notice here that I think will come up in the future is that we've got an image of Saturn there, who's the time god, who, yes, the furthest distant, the furthest planet out, visible to the naked eye for the ancients, but in the stories, he's often associated with the pole. And we can see here, like a lot of the time gods, he has a lame leg. His leg's up and there's a stick coming out like Long John Silver. So there's a little mushroom analogy going on here. They're pointing you at the skirt and with the leg. You'll see that often. However, I think the main thing here is that Saturn, if he's the pole god, does stand on one leg. That leg is immovable and is at the pole, and then the heavens and time wander around it. So again, analogies for time. And obviously Saturn eats his own children, which is another analogy for each moment devouring the next, and the universe itself needing to devour itself in order to change.
Right, exactly, right. And it becomes a tyrannical figure that must be overthrown in order for the cycles to persist, right? The youth must eventually overthrow Saturn and replace them, but then you become them. It's an inevitability, right? This is how these cycles always tend to go. And this, unless you can find the hidden path to break out, right?
And he is the great dragon. He is Draco circling around, devouring its own tail at the North Pole.
Absolutely, right. And this imagery is so, one of the interesting things with that Saturn Chronos is how widespread and uniform it is. Even in India, you have Shani and they're limp as well, you know, and in China, you have Saturn in the same. It's wild.
His paraphernalia would suggest, especially his stone sickle, would suggest that even the ancients were saying, look, this is a Stone Age god. This is from a long time ago. And he's even supplanted in the tail. So they're kind of showing you this guy's from a long time ago. and his time.
Absolutely.
He's, you know,
When you read a lot about these ancients and they're talking about the golden age of Kronos or Saturn, right? And they'll talk about these great heroes and godlike men. One of the things though is like they are satisfied with what they had. They all, and what they had was water and spelt. They talk, you know, they say they're like they just had the bare minimum because they're from that ancient past, you know.
that fits in perfectly. That Saturnian golden age idea is Saturn's all everything that Saturn was at once before Jupiter came along and chopped his power off, eviscerated his power from between his legs. So then you get fate and all these other storm god activities, this weather idea that we were just talking about. So, well, there's another version of that tale, isn't there, in Adam and Eve? So if we go on to the next slide, I'm hoping that this dovetails in nicely.
Just before you do, I also want to point out one of my favorite things that we see with the Saturn myth from Virgil and the Eclogues. We see that after Saturn is castrated and brought to low to the earth, they will eventually return. The next age after the Iron Age is the Golden Age reborn. And how does Saturn return this time? They're the Virgo. They're that Virgin Estrella reborn as that piece, Heskia, to come, you know?
Beautiful.
Or that Soteria. Wild stuff.
So I want to point out the serpent and the tree and the dragon and a hero. Well, there on the left is Heracles with the dragon Lardon in the I don't know what it's called in the Greek tradition, but in Roman it's Lardon. And there's the tree with the, you know, the in the garden of Hesperides, which is the like west essentially, or the setting Venus. So it's up in the sky, and I will say that the two trees, to some extent, are the two. So you see one tree there, and that's because the pole of the Earth points up to Ursa Minor, which is within the coils of Draco. Though we can see Ursa Minor in the little bear-looking thing under its elbow in the right-hand image. So where that thing's tail is, there terminates the North Pole. Now there's another secret pole that terminates within the coils of Draco itself. So there are these two poles. One pole is the pole of the Earth that spins around, and the other pole is the pole of the ecliptic, which is the plane of the planets, as that spins around as well. And you know that as you look outside, it's off at an angle. And this is how the ancients would have seen it. That we know the Earth's off at an angle, but the ancients would have seen it as the sky was off at the angle because of geocentrism. So I want to show that this idea of the serpent and the tree is very ancient indeed, and not just biblical.
No, it's so much more. It's so much more than that, right? We have that Greek tradition. You have Zoe, the life, right, who eats that fruit, which could be a quince or a pomegranate, or could be a mushroom. But again, you know, and as you're pointing out, it's represented in the stars. You have that Ophiuchus, you have the serpents, right? And these coming together is a big sign in the stars that they would have seen, been able to witness, you know, as a marking of time again.
Absolutely.
You know, and we've talked about this too, right? One of the things, like, they're not just worshiping Ion, they're worshiping the stations of the zodiac. They're not just worshiping the sun, they're worshiping the stations of the sun, right? The Great Mother is all of those faces. Ion is all of those faces. It's that multiplicity that is important.
It's not just the thing itself, but what it's doing. That's the important thing. And all these heavenly bodies are moving through time. That's what they're doing. And as that measure, so we've already established that time and mortality are represented in this energy force by this dragon serpent in its many forms. Now, by the time it gets down to here where we are, it's seen to have split up into 7, which are the 7 planets, or the 7 virtues, the 7 vices, you know, the 7 chakras, the 7 main stations on the fruits of the tree of life. It's represented in so many different places, but it's a 7-headed serpent. Why is it a serpent? How have we gone from the weather to a 7-headed serpent? Well, I said that in my thesis at the beginning that this storm god is archetypal of the weather, as in fate, the changes of fate. And we've established that there's this supra cosmic water above, which is like Plato's realm of ideas or something like that. Then that moves down into the zodiac, which is a further way that fate enters the realm. Then we get the planets, which is a randomization of the stations of that fate. And then we get the human body, which has these same 7 things repeated in the nervous system, in this tree of life that's in our body, in this 7-headed serpent that's the nervous system and the spine and your guts. So that weather up there in the planets is also down here. That same serpent energy on all through these different stations, these different levels of reality, and now within you, and are represented in several ways, as we can see, that either coils of intertwining serpents. We got a menorah there in the middle with the 7 planets on there. It's often also represented by something like in Sumeria. We can see in the bottom, if we look towards the bottom right, we can see the 2 Apkallu fish priests stood outside the tree of life with the pole god Anu at the top of it. And this is, again, we can see this, like, you can imagine the winged dude at the top is the brain, and you got the spine, and we've got these 2 different like energy centers as they saw it in there. And it's they're all essentially analogies for the cerebrospinal system as I can see it. And also, obviously, this greater metaphysic and a simplification and a systemization of, fate and medicine and everything that you could need to get on in life. It's a system. They don't mean it literally, but there are 7 nerve endings from your spine. So there's these things all linked together.
As above, so below. That, or even better put, that which is above is the same as that which is below.
Yeah, you can see this is the 7 colors of the spectrum, the 7 notes in an octave. We'll see how much this actually does link to that music of the spheres later. And you can see that's what's being hinted at here. It's always planets and a body, and it's these same things linked together. But I want to show that it's essentially this polarity serpent against a tree. And I've heard several times that the earliest story, as this I suppose he was like a story archaeologist, had said that the early story was God created the world and then needed to retire, and as help he left a tree in the center of things with his son the snake in there. So it's getting at mysticism, because eventually the tree is the nervous system, the snake is the energy within the nervous system, and there are your 2 things. But we'll get onto this in a moment. So again, we can see that throughout the world, from Sumeria there in the top left, then we've got a Christian symbol, which is an anchor, an ankh, with 2 fish beside it, which is a Piscean trope. It's the same as those 2 Apkallu priests in the Sumerian image to the left, another Piscean trope. These fish of the underworld, possibly those dream fish that Dion loves, because they are carp. They are carp paradu, they call them. That tree between the paradu is actually described as a garden and an irrigation system with a single tree in the center, as in a nervous system, a vascular system, and a spine, and then you have the brain at the top. Again, you can see that repeated in that anchor. Then we got Adam and Eve, which are an obvious 2 polar beings stood around a tree with a snake in it. Beneath that, we've got, in the bottom left, we've got an old one from, I think it's early Egypt rather than Sumeria, but showing those same symbols, but we can see much clearer mushrooms in the what would be the priests on towards the outside. You can see that, like they curl around like mushroom heads with stalks. Next to that, we got the mushroom god, the nervous system god of communication, Hermes, and that's, we got two polar versions of Hermes around a unified version of Hermes there. It's brute Mercury, unrefined Mercury, and the high Mercury. We can see one's like a bit being a bit of a wuss towards the right, and then one's being a bit overconfident to the left. And it's this augmentation of the nervous system repeated again in the Ripley scroll on the right there, which is a famous English alchemical tract, which is a great big long scroll. It's gorgeous. But again, we got the water, we got the masculine and feminine there, represented by the sun and the moon, Adam and Eve, and we've got the tree. It's a polar tree in the center with two serpentine branches, roots going up into a tree. It's all these same analogies over and over again. So let's talk about Adam and Eve. We've already spoke about Phanes basically, and Saturn, and this time when it becomes a serpent. At some point, it splits off into a masculine and feminine sides from being this androgynous serpent, which contains both the masculine and feminine, in this tree, which is I've already said, is the pole, the axis of the earth. Well, the serpent of androgynous time talks to either Adam or Eve, offers them an apple, here, have some of this. Well, they get kicked out of the garden because suddenly we've got time. That Saturnian golden age is ended, because now we've got Adam and Eve acting autonomously. We've got time. And that this all seems to keep feeding back into the human body as well, because the same analogies work for the human body. That one of the more common understandings of that is you've eaten the hormones of sex. You've had sex, enjoyed yourself, had that knowledge, and now you like enter into adulthood, as it was, or responsibility. But all of the alchemical mystical traditions favor semen retention and such, and working with these chemicals and these hormones that we've got. And we've already said that the 7 branches of the nerve ends that's the dragon, in the tree. The energy is the dragon in the tree. And that if you eat any of those fruit from the nervous system, then you deplete that energy. And the whole point in being in a lot of the magical traditions is to gain that energy, from Qigong to Kundalini to Hermetics. They're all about saving up that energy, boosting it up the tree. So
Yeah.
they're talking about this serpent energy from the beginning of time, and how to utilize it is the way I'm seeing it.
I mean, you do get some differentiations, right? You do have a lot of that sexual magic that comes out of Tantrika, and that is, within now firmly the Western tradition more so. And you do see some of this in Tantric Buddhism, where they are utilizing that sexual fluid, and they're utilizing this in these taboo breaking consumption rites and other ways. They're directing that energy in a but you're utilizing this energy in some way. You got to master it.
I want to stipulate that it's not just sexual energy. It's all the energies of the body. This is encapsulated in the Hermit card, like it's just saving himself from everything. Not too much thought, not too much emotion, not too much, randiness. You're doing the alchemical work on yourself.
Yeah,
so
and I was just going to point out, within the magical traditions, what you see is that extremes tend to work, and you'll get people who push and break these kind of things, because that's where you can get this kind of intensity. So on one hand, you do see the extreme retention and abstinence, but you also see the extreme engagement.
Yeah,
it gets,
agree.
But
yeah, I just wanted to stipulate that it's utilization of that energy in whatever form it takes. It just so happens that humans are randy, and it's quite strong down there, and is a good representation of what that energy is talking about, because it's a polar energy, and sex is about the meeting of those two polar things. So it's an exemplar as much as it is anything else. I want to show here that this tradition is in lots of different places. It seems to be the pole star stuff is the exemplar of what to do, is enter that ionic realm. Time doesn't move at the pole, you go up there. Mushrooms are all over the place. We can see on the skirt there of Fuxi and Nuwa from China, that there's mushrooms in all the pleats. We've got this coiling serpent idea again, that the thing that moves your legs, or the things that you conquer, is this serpent force, this the idea that that serpent wants to do its own thing. You know, your genitals will get you in trouble if you let them think for you, kind of an idea. So you got to conquer these lower forces that are from that anima mundi, that soul of the world serpent that will devour everything that it wants. You've got to resist it somewhat. So this is that conquering. This is why they're all stood on the dragon. They're stood on the urges of the nervous system. When you conquer that, you can save the energy. We have the symbols of masculine and feminine ratio, and the square and compass, straight lines and circles, masculine, feminine. I will say as well that all three of these are drawn to that pattern, and that the dragon tongue looking writing there are all constellations, but also all connect to the spokes of that pattern that I discovered, which is also to do with time. There's a double analogy going on here as well. So it's not just the body that they're talking about. We can see in the rebus on the right that the 7 planets, those 7 nerve endings that end in the endocrine system, are conquered. They're all empowering that rebus. But also the geometry at his feet is pointing at the pole star stuff again. I've put a proof of that in the bottom right, but if you want to know about that stuff, different episodes entirely. However, it's really important, this pole star stuff, because on the next slide, unless you have something to say.
I just got to talk about this rebus symbol on the far right here, because there's just so much awesomeness. Look at the 4-3. The 4 and 3, that's the 4 is the masculine, the 3 is the feminine. They come together to create the 7 Fanis, the intersexed being, and we get that sacred 7 again, right? You have the square and the triangle together, that creates the world, right? Creates all of material reality, and it allows for the unfolding within these 2 patterns. You know, look on the outside, you have that Orphic egg in the same shape, pointing down, right? So that it can come out of that womb, because it is being born, right?
And he's doing the mushroom sign, and it's, you know, just the way he stood. It's not only an egg, it's also a skull. You can kind of see there's a mouth there, 2 eyes there. There's so much involved in this, and again, it's drawn to that pattern that I love so much. But if we could go on to the next image, because I'm afraid I'm going to be here forever. So here's the basilica. What's a basilisk? What's a cockatrice? Well, these are somewhat mushroom analogies again, and I will say that Orphic serpent could possibly be a mushroom analogy. When you look at Amanita muscaria mushroom, it actually comes from a little egg shape. When you look at that egg shape, it's upside down, as we've referenced with the Orphic egg, and there's a literal image of a snake curling around it in a single line. And then from that bursts this character that obviously opens its arms, and it looks like a cock and a serpent together. You know, it looks like a penis. It's got a red head and a white shaft, and there's this like foreskin veil that drops away. But also, it looks like a serpent coming out of an egg. So you've got this cock, snake, egg, you know, guards the waters again, because again, mushrooms have this very watery modality. However, that's a basilisk, a cockatrice. It's very mixed up with mushrooms. And I'll point out as well, if you look at the image of a dragon, half of the time, if you look at the shape of its tongue, it's not what you expect. It's the shape of a liberty cap mushroom, a psilocybis semilanciata. And lots of times dragons get lanced in the mouth where the tongue is. The tongue's being lanced by a semilanciata. It's the same meaning. It means a short lance in Latin. But anyway, back to the basilisk. Sorry, if you go to the previous image.
Oh, where was I? Sorry. Oh,
that one, yeah. So that's St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Now look at that. Look at the building. A basilisk means a crowned serpent, a crowned dragon. What do you see at the end of that promenade there? There's a crown, 2 eyes, loads of teeth. It's a dragon. It's literally a basilisk. Okay, if we go on to the next image, I've coloured it in. So if you look towards the bottom, you can see there's like a crowned serpent, if you can see that well. I don't know how small it is. But the St. Peter's Basilica is literally a crowned dragon. There's one at the front, and at the back of the same building, there's a serpent with its tongue out. Can you see the center image? I don't know where you can see all this stuff. Yeah. So again, you got the image of a serpent and its tongues, a forked tongue sticking out the back in the garden. You see that?
Yeah, that's wild.
Right. So if we look to the in the center row on the left, we can see the courtyard outside St. Peter's Basilica. And there is two obelisks and a shape that looks a lot like kind of the British flag with a series of crosses. And I'm looking at it straight away going, hang on a minute, that's a keyhole. Can you see a keyhole there? As if you put a key in it on the image on the left. No,
totally see the keyhole. That's wild.
Yeah, no, I found the key. So if you look up one image, there's a key. If you look down where the keyhole is, there's a road that goes down, and then there's like a pentagonal key head there. Can you see that in the top left image?
Yeah. Oh wow.
So literally
that's
a key
there.
Yeah. So I know who owns St. Peter's keys. It used to be Cybele, Cybele, whatever the hell you want to call her, and Janus, the time gods, essentially, these Saturnian gods. So I'm like, well, I know where to put the key. You put the key in the keyhole there. So I examined the keyhole, and it turned out that it's lots of geometry related to the lion, the bull, the eagle, the man, the angle of the earth, and all this precession stuff, right? So I'm like, well, I know what this serpent knowledge is. Well, you know, this is the serpent knowledge, the basilica. And straight away, it's pointing me to the heavens and this amazing processional geometry, which happens because of this great year from precession. These two poles, I will see in a moment. But basically, there are two mushrooms in that courtyard. We can see there are two wells there, and if we look towards the bottom right of the main set of images, you can see a fountain, kind of a thing, a well of two mushrooms. It's usually two mushrooms because that's the dose. You see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's two lots of that. We got two obelisks for the two poles, and when I worked out all the geometry, it's, I mean, perfectly that cross thing in the center of the keyhole is pointing at the heavens, this processional mass, which is time. It's all about time. And if we look at the audience hall, which is next to the basilica, we can see that it's in the shape of a serpent's head on the outside, and inside the hall, it's just a serpent with fangs. It's barely even hidden.
That one's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and then if we look, there's a picture of a statue of Saint Peter that's in the basilica, and he's got the Wheel of Fortune around his head, which always points me to this processional stuff. And he's black like Saturn, and he's holding the keys. He's holding the keys to heaven, and we know where the keys to heaven go. They go to heaven. So if I'm showing that the secret held by the symbology of the Vatican is this dragon knowledge, is this serpent knowledge, and it's pointing at processional harmonic maths, the Pythagorean stuff, the music of the spheres. If we go to the next, and obviously mushrooms, there's always mushrooms. So here's Ion, or Phades, or whatever you want to symbolize him as, from a Mithraic place and a Mithraic temple, and he's holding a staff to this axis again. And so what is it about this axis? I don't want to go into it loads here again because I've said it so many times. But with the interaction of these two poles, the first pole being the fixed pole of the earth as they saw it, and this second pole is this moving pole of the rest of the cosmos. And in the interaction of those two, when you work out, it's actually 25,900 years long, this long calendar cycle, the longest cycle that anything does in the heavens. When you overlay that long cycle over 360 degrees and call it a year, what a day is, what a week is, what a month is, what a season is all these gorgeous numbers that form literally the platonic solids, which are the smallest 3D objects you can get. Normal shapes, it's time, it's like the square root of the speed of light. It looks like it's the foundation of the universe, of the creation of the universe. again, it's nautical miles of the moon. It's the size of the planets in relation to each other. I don't want to go into it, but when you start looking at it, it's absolutely mind-blowing how many things fit into these super harmonic numbers that you'll have heard of before, like 216, 432, 1080, 108, and all revolving around this 25,920 year cycle, which is also sometimes shortened to 26,000 years.
Beautiful. Oh,
Right. So if we go on to that, and again, we've got, it's all the same things. It's time. It's this serpent going up the body. It's the energy from the beginning of the universe gone through the motions and in us. So what do we get out of that? Well, we get the poles outside Solomon's temple. And when you look at Solomonic magic, it's basically all those demons are things like different kinds of lust and nostalgia, things that eat up your energy emotionally. So you're supposed to cast them out and get them to build your temple. Well, what is the temple? Well, the gates outside the temple are the pillars, the Masonic pillars of Yakin and Boaz, which are these two pillars, the two poles, which I've put there, one red, one white. Yakin goes up to the pole of the earth. Boaz is and we can see at the top, there's the constellations there and the zodiac rather than the earth, because that's the pole of the constellations. You get these numbers from it and all these amazing things. Well, these are the two trees in the Garden of Eden. These are the Red King and the White Queen. What are they? Well, the Red King is the tree of life, which is the vascular system, the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the nervous system. Of course, you know good and evil from it. You get life from your vascular system, and you understand what's good and bad, hot and cold from the nervous system. And what happens at the pole? Well, the symbol of the pole is red and white bound together, like at the North Pole. So you got these two Saturnian knit together. So that's your Red King, White Queen from alchemy. And when they come together in harmony, I've put an alchemical image there of the Red King and White Queen to the center left bottom. When they come together, the Holy Spirit or Mercury or something extra happens to the system when you can get everything calm enough, when you can get the serpent, as in Kundalini, to go up the spine from that lowest point, which is the what's it called, that bone?
the
What's your bone
coccyx.
called? Your coccyx and your sacral plexus and the sacrum, and that's where the serpent is, and that's why I think that egg of Fanny's is upside down, as it were, because it's the sacral plexus. This goes over into tarot. I could show you a million things with the Chariot card and the sacral plexus, and now this eventually gets wound up with the Grail myth. But if we go on to the next, I know I'm darting through this, but I'm seeing I've already spent an hour. So they have this in China through the Qi Gong stuff, and although I want to cut this out because it's taking too long, what are they doing? Well, they are focusing on the pole star when they meditate. Literally, they're focusing on the pole star. There's an image there, top left, or the plow. Depends what they want to achieve. And then they're having this system in the body, which has the analogy of a weather system, the weather god. There's this going above, precipitating, and then coming back down again. You'd know it as the Amrita as it comes back in Indian systems, for example. But it's the purifying of this energy, sending up the spine to be purified, gather other energies, and then it comes back down again. This is the way it's put. This is the analogy. Next, and I will say this is from Qi Gong. Now, how do they have? What's their system? Well, it's all 24s and 108s and these numbers again. It's these energetic time system numbers again. So I'm seeing that there's been a system at some point that's branched off into lots of places, and they've all still got bits of it. And I see the main root of this system being Persia, because even the Chinese stuff seems to have come from some early Mithraism, and the symbol for there's a secret constellation to do with Mithra, which is the second pole. We have one pole in Draco, that we all know about in Ursa Minor. And then there's another one within Draco's coils itself. And the god Mithras represents this. And they use that same symbol and use the same word as the Persians did. And the original word, old word in China for a magician is something like magi, as in Magoi, the Magi from Persia. So
It all goes
it
back to
looks to me,
Medea, right? And the
yeah.
Medes.
Well, I would say that they were using drugs on their nervous system to supercharge the nervous system to do the magic to get to these ionic realms. Again, in the Kundalini system, that when you count all the lotus petals that are symbolic for the different chakra, these seven heads of the serpent, well, it adds up to 144, which is half of 216 and 288, and it's these numbers all the time, basically.
And Abhinavagupta tells us, right, with the lotus petals, these are consciousness, and they're also that Shakti, that Parvati, right, the feminine energy, the feminine side
Drawn
of
down.
Shiva. And it's also
Yeah.
related to, again, the spokes on the wheel, and they're the same number in the stations of the sun, the same number again, and it's, again, that divine feminine.
It's hours a day, it's seconds a day, it's how many times you average breathe in a day. It's bound into so many things. It's amazing, frankly. To the ancients, it's proof of God. This is clearly what they're getting at. It's the harmony of the spheres. If we
Absolutely.
go on to, and again, I wanted to show that sorry, if you go on to the previous one, we've got this Ion Fanny's character from the Mithraeum on the left, and I'm just showing again that the way that the serpent's coiled around it from a like an eggy lump at the bottom that he stood on, sorry, which represents the world, but it's the sacrum, and then the snake goes up the sacrum, and it's the same in the Kundalini system. There's no difference. I just feel like, for me personally, because this is on the much more woo side of things, I didn't want to look at it. But I remembered back when I'd refused to look at astrology as well, because that was woo to me back then. And when I learned astrology, I was like, oh, this is like psychology for the ancients, and is the keys to the code, as it were. When you can work all this out, you work the rest out.
Question for you. When you say woo, are you saying WOO or WU?
I'm saying woo. Well, actually, isn't
Actually.
I think the Wu Tang system is Qigong system originally. It's not. It's like the Shaolin route of the Qigong stuff.
And Wu Tang is the Dragon Lady for next week's episode. We were going to talk about that.
Aren't they fascinating? Yeah, I love those dragon ladies. They're everywhere as well. They're in Britain as much as they're in Japan or China. Yeah, fascinating. But again, if we look at the symbols all across the bottom, there's this mix between your spine, the pole or the poles, the nervous system, and which is part of the spine system, and the vascular system, and the mushroom, and mysticism, and time. It's like all these things repeated, and you can see from the symbols on the bottom, and without me even needing to go over what they are, you can see they're all the same kind of. They're just slight variations on each, and you can totally extract from all of those this most frightening thing, which is your own energy, your own power, that weather, that serpent in the weather, the fact that a serpent's the scariest thing to a human being, and that your nervous system is actually geared towards spotting serpents over anything else. It spots serpents first. It's frightening, like the weather, like the storm, like the drugs are frightening. The egg, the nervous system, the tree, the pole, the spine, the mushrooms rooting up and opening out, the world itself being birthed and opening up, toroidal fields. It's all these just over and over again, these kind of repeating motifs that are just a clusterfuck of meaning. And just like with that, the dragon with George and the dragon, you know, you can say, oh, why is it lancing it in its mouth? And it's like, it's not really you can't just take, as a Western mind wants a line, a straight through, like a comic book panel to explain the instructions of what we're on about. No, what they do is they take all this stuff and they mix it together in a big pot, and they don't really give a crap what it looks like on the other end, but it's all there. And from looking from myth to myth to myth to system, you can eventually pull it all together. What is the dragon? It's the alignment of energy at its most awesome.
Also, you know, what does the dragon do, right? When you get to this energy alignment, what happens? That's when you can connect and you can be in harmony and you can walk your true will. And this is where you start to see all of this newness come in. Or a lot of people, they get confronted with this kind of stuff. They want to see the ancient roots, and then they don't like it when there's new iteration or variation or development. You know, they go, oh, that proves that this is a new thing. But this kind of energy goes through cycles and it constantly rebirths itself. And when someone finds and connects to that energy, this stuff will reassert itself in a new way or come about. Perfect example of this is we keep talking about the tarot. In terms of ancient stuff, the tarot is very, very modern, Middle Ages, you know, and then even then, I would say that the modern tarot doesn't come into full conception until Alpheus Levi. And when he's mixing in the Kabbalah, when you get that Golden Dawn stuff, you know?
I've got some Eliphas for you today. I think Eliphas might answer a few questions for you. So if we can go on to the next image.
Awesome.
So I just want to show that, you know, the word tarot itself, you just said tarot, and the last card of the major arcana in the tarot is the world card, which is the Draco card. It's Draco surrounding the egg of the world and the androgyne in there with holding two poles. So when we look at the word tarot, the gematria for that, gematria is exchanging either Greek or Hebrew letters for numbers, simple as. There's several ways of doing it. And when you do it to the word tarot properly, you get this long count calendar number 25920. You can see the calculation up there for it in the top left. Now, when I do that to the tarot, to the Sator square, the famous Sator square, which we'll go into, I think I've already spoken about this on previous episodes, but if not, go and look into it. If I do the right thing with this, as with words like INRI, INRI above Jesus, IHS, the Jesuit word for Jesus, and all these other things, you get these numbers out of it. So it's really deep in these traditions. And I specifically wanted to show it here in Mithraism, the Sator squares from Mithraism, to show you that they had all this serpent knowledge in there, because a lot of the characters have been showing a Mithraic here, especially that Ion.
It's also, I want to point out that in the earliest iterations of the Sator square is what? It is a phylactery. It is a piece of magical armor. It is literally carved on gold leaf or lead and worn over the breast, in the same way that we've been talking about that PGM spell of the Chanubis or the Ouroboros phylactery. Right? Again, we're coming back to this magical armor to protect you from daimons and fire.
Yeah, well, this particular phylactery was said to put out fire without the need for water, which I've never quite figured out, to be honest. I figured pretty much everything else about this bloody thing out, but never that. But as you can see, once you do the maths, I've just shortcutted it all. You get numbers like 432. 25920, just like you do when you multiply INRI, which is above Jesus, you get 25920, which is this long processional calendar count. So if we go on to the next image, please. Right, this is so cool. Now, you'd think that this stuff was woo or quite Eastern, or I think I've shown enough that this energy stuff seems to be in Mithraism, not just like Indian and Chinese stuff. So what's this? Well, this on the left is the armory of Jesus's crucifixion. So we've got an Ouroboros serpent of the crown of thorns. We know what thorns often were used as a drug delivery device. Sorry, a drug delivery device. We've got the spear and the vinegar sponge, and we know vinegar was supposed to be an antidote to the dipsas poison that he might have taken when he shouts out, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty. That's the name for a dipsas snake. Dipsas means thirsty. So in the center, we can see his 5 wounds. Oh, and I will also say we've obviously got the pole. Jesus is a pole god. You know, he's on the pole. Those are like 3, 4, 5 triangles, and they're all pointing at this processional stuff that I've been talking about before, including the INRI above, which I've already proved in the last slide. When you do the gematria, it adds up to the 25,920 of the long processional cycle. So that's pointing at this ionic realm because we want to get beyond time. The pole points you beyond time. Nothing moves at the center, like the spoke of a wheel. So we've got something in accordance to the black sun in the center of this shield. Black sun's like the sun, but without time. It's the power source at the beginning of time, as it were. And in that black sun, it has IHS, which I've proved in the last slide, also points to this processional number stuff. And then we have the 5 wounds of Christ, 2 hands, 2 feet, and the heart, the sacred heart there in the middle, bleeding into the Holy Grail. Well, hang on, he was pierced through the liver, wasn't he? Like Odin was, with Gungnir, his lance, his semi-lanciata, by the way. And Jesus also speared inside by Longinus, who you can figure out is actually Sagittarius on the wheel of the zodiac. Often you'll see John next to him, who's Aquarius. Sagittarius and Aquarius go between Capricorn, because Capricorn's really, the real death of Jesus is on the 21st of December, not Easter time. It's the death of the sun. But anyway, I digress. So these wounds have a name, right? So I've already said it's a bit dodgy with his heart being there and not his liver. And obviously his liver being punished like that is stuff to do with Prometheus as well. Throwbacks, who is also a drug god, because the sticks that's used there by Prometheus is it narcosat or something like that? It's the root of narcotics. He kept his drugs in there.
It's also that Medea transforms into a vulture, and she's the one who eats the liver, and then she uses that as the main ingredient in her theriaca, in her fornications, in order to grant ionic life.
The liver regenerates, the serpent regenerates. Jesus was the serpent on the cross. Jesus is the same as the brazen serpent on the staff of Moses. So we've got these 5 wounds. Do you know what these 5 wounds are called in like other Christian tales?
Stigmata.
Sator, Aripo, Tenet, Opera, and Rotas. You got exactly the same. Yes. Yes.
I never heard that. That's wild.
Right. So the Qigong systems in the East, the Qigong style systems in the East, are the lower Dantian, which I can equate with the chalice or the chariot card in the tarot, which is the area just underneath your navel. They store the energy there in a cauldron, they call it. They bring it up towards the heart, and then they push it out through the hands and the feet. Right? If you look on the diagram on the right, I've changed nothing there. You can see that it's got the points where it comes out of the hands, the points where it comes out of the feet. The lower Dantian's got a circle on it, and then the heart chakra, as it were, has got a circle on. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Now, obviously, there's drugs involved with that chalice as well, with the Jesus chalice, and that has water and the blood caught in it, which you think might happen with the dipsas, as it stops the body taking on water and separates the two. However, these things are always
it also has to do, like remembering a lot of these rites, the death has to happen, right? In order for the Virgin to ascend to the stars and become a god, they have to be killed on the cross. They got to be burned at the stake, right? Even Hercules was drugged, tied to a pyre, and set ablaze before he could become a god man. So It all goes back to that Dionysian stuff as well, right? Dionysus is he is the fruit, and we have to eat of his fruit. He has to be sacrificed, and we have to drink his blood.
You're sounding strange, Snappy. I just want to check that. Can anybody else hear that?
Yeah, your mic is sounding strange.
Sound like a Dalek, mate. Say exterminate.
Hello, check.
Your feedback.
Say exterminate.
Exterminate. Let me check here.
If do you want me to carry on while you have a fiddle about?
Does that make a difference at all?
I think you might need to log out and log back in.
How does that sound?
Not good. Sorry, everybody. I'd like to continue this podcast with a little song and dance. You ready, Dion? Well, we now have no control, but there are so many things in this one image, this armory of Jesus, and I will note as well that when I've looked at other images of this, and this image drawn like this is quite a frequent one. I've seen other images where essentially everything to do with Jesus's crucifixion is drawn in the shape of a psilocybe semilanceata mushroom, the liberty cap mushroom. Like you can imagine, a spear is somewhat well. I mean, it's named after a lance. That Latin word semilanceata means short lance. So you'll see the sponge on the end of a stick looks like a mushroom. The nails that they use to nail him in when presented are just mushroom shaped. It is pretty wild, as Snappy would put it. You're still weird.
Feedback.
Yeah. I can see your face, but you sound like a robot.
Oh, well. Well,
now, how does that
there
sound?
you go.
Yes, you're back. Yeah.
All right.
Well, we got
Dion's at
feedback.
it.
Okay. Let me pull up the slides here. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So there's just
When
two
I
left,
exited-
and then we're done. So I'm going to pull it back to.
Here we are.
Am I doubling up, anybody?
Yeah, we're doubling up, but Snappy's okay.
So should we come back in?
Yeah, maybe try that. Sorry, guys. We will be joined in 1 second by our buddies here as they reset their audio. Let me know if it improves or what have you. This is going to be fun, though, talking about Alpheus Levi. I was actually listening to a podcast by Jason Louv where he was talking to Mitch Horowitz, and were talking about Alpheus Levi a bit, and such an interesting character. One of the most important magical persons of all time.
The Baphomet.
Yeah, you're sounding good on my end. Do people hear an echo from Dion?
Is there an echo?
All right.
There's a delay.
It's always something.
Well, we're almost there. A couple more slides.
Here we go. All right. Once Ryan loads up, we'll be good.
Rock and roll, baby.
You're sounding good here. How does it sound for other people?
I think it's doubling up.
It's doubling up.
Is it?
Okay, let me try one thing here.
It might just be that you've got a speaker on, Snappy.
How does that sound?
We're in session. We're golden now.
We're golden
Check.
now?
Yeah, we're golden. Let's go.
Beautiful. Right.
Okay.
So let's bring this back around then. So if we go into the previous slide, just so I can pull my thoughts together. Sorry. Oh, I didn't put it in. That's all right. I put an extra slide in, but it was just George and the Dragon. I just wanted to say that we could. Can we see now how we've gone from this weather god essentially, and I said weather is in all the variables in existence, That's what we've looked at. That's the weather. How to somehow get beyond, get to the waters, the inside, the internal, this feminine interior, and utilize that dragon energy, that energy from the beginning of the universe. We line it up. That's what yoga is about. It's about lining yourself up. This is what Hermetics is about. It's about taking your focus and your willpower and everything else and lining yourself up. This whole dragon serpent knowledge is about lining yourself up. How are they doing it? They're doing it to the macrocosm out there. They're doing it via these numbers somehow. I don't quite have the connective tissue between apart from the fact that they're talking about this energy, this sex serpent energy from the beginning of time in us, and that's why it's to do with time and why these numbers occur and why that's still related to something. It doesn't seem much like the energy work is much to do with time, but when you think about it, in this ancient system, they're coming from the same place. Even though to me, I don't quite feel like I've got all that connective tissue in my head yet. And obviously, this is me spouting nonsense on the internet. It's still working theory. However, can you see there's a Sator square in the center of this?
Absolutely.
So this is Eliphas Levi. And if you look at the bottom of the image, he's got very similar letters to your dragon tongue. And then when we look at around the Wheel of Fortune there, we have the letters for the name of God, Yahuwah, Yod He Vav He. Now, I've not decoded everything for you, Snappy. However, I do believe this is the key to it all. If you look at that Yod He Vav He, that in Gematria will add up to 26, which is the same as if you add up the number of those zodiac animals around the outside. They also add up to 26. That's 26,000 years, 25,920 years of this processional cycle. If you take all the dots and dashes, you can see how those Hebrew letters are constructed there, the Yod He Vav He. If you count those together and start multiplying with them, well, you can see there are an extra. So there's several things going on here. So you can get like 72 out of it, 108 out of it, 24 comes out of it. He's getting you to count them. That's what they're asking you to do. Those dots and dashes are for counting. And when most of the time, when I count these things up, it's this processional knowledge, the knowledge of this dragon system. There you go. That's so I've not actually counted your Ouroboros Serpent PGM stuff, but I believe perhaps tomorrow when I have a look at it, I'll probably get these numbers out of it.
We'll see.
You know,
that'll be interesting.
Abraxas, that adds up to 360, doesn't it? 365, sorry. So that's calendrical.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of calendrical stuff that's going on, right? We see that in that hand of Sabazios, and we know that the Sabazios Serapis is the key. That's that dragon figure, right? This is the main deity that we're looking for. And when you look at that hand, right? Remember, okay, one of the things that I'll get into, but I've been looking into a bit, is called Computus Digitorum. And this was a system, and it goes all the way back to Egypt, but it was an occulted system of counting on the hands. And you could go
That's what it is, yeah.
You could go from 0 to 999,000. And that was seen
so I was going to say to you,
yeah.
So what is that then?
This is 999,000. And then this is 3. When you put them like this, you have the totality of creation in between time.
So I really, what was really strange is I was looking at an alchemical image, and this had always escaped me. This good, it's like the symbol of esoteric, yeah, but it's the symbol of good speech, isn't it? And I'm going to speak here with rationality, and there's a hermetic thing to it.
Benedicto, it was used in the Platonic Academy. They would.
So you started talking about it. You started talking about it, and it was the only question I had remaining about all the occult. Pretty much was that, and then you started talking about it on previous episodes, and I'd worked most of it out, and what I hadn't worked out, you'd worked out. Apart from this, I think it's 666. because what it was, you'd count on the phalanges. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And it's times 3, or the 2 phalanges there. So it's 6, 6, and 6. 6 times 6 times 6 is 216, which is half of 432. So all this stuff, it always just keeps coming back to this stuff over and over and over again.
666 would make perfect sense. I saw the 999 because that's also an absolute recurring thing within the PGM. And we see Typhon. So this is a thing there's these great names. So there are these great names of God, or the absolute, and they're referred to as the name that equals 999,000. And there are 2 occurrences that I've been able to find. One of them is in the PGM and is said to come from this guy, Epidaurus. And then the other one comes from the Anastasi handbook. And yeah, I have the one from the PGM. When we do my presentation, I'll show it to you guys. But yeah, it equals in the isopsophy to 999,000. But I think your thing may be onto it something too. I'm not too sure. The 666 makes just as much
mine's
sense.
Just a guess.
Yeah,
mine's just a guess. But what I am quite excited about is taking that PGM and your characteres and applying this gematria isopsophy to it, because that is he's obviously taking off the characteres there. That's what he's doing, and I've already decoded it. So I'm hopeful that we'll get down to the bottom of it a little more.
Amazing. So Dion, you're going to set us up for our deep dive into the PGM. So we got your presentation here, but before you dig in, what did you think of Ryan's stuff?
Oh, I loved it. That's what I was going to say. Keep going, because I'm going to have to do mine at a later time.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all. I don't know if you saw in the chat. I said for y'all to keep going on this, and we could do mine in a day or 2.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we can come back to your stuff, so we can go deep.
Oh, sorry, Dion.
Oh no.
Once you start me off, I can't.
No. What it is that what you're presenting is so deep that I want you to keep going. I love what you're doing. So, it's to do justice to the material. You can't half-ass it. I love it. Keep going.
All right. Well, we'll come back to Dion's presentation next week, and we'll get into some of the stuff that I've been researching in terms of the PGM. So to remind everyone, this is the Ouroboros phylactery, or the Chenubis phylactery, right? Really infamous, important piece. And there in the center, we have the Orphic name of the dragon in the charketeres, these mysterious symbols that no one can translate, yet Dr. Hammond claims to have translated them. So here is the actual scan from the PGM, which I just thought was really cool. I wanted to show you guys. And I wanted to show you guys, here we go. We got our buddy Neil.
Hey. I thought you were throwing me in at the hour mark. I'm sitting with you sent me a link in the beginning. I'm just like, oh shit.
No worries, man. You jumping in now is perfect, because Dion's going to be taking off at 2, and we're getting right now into the PGM, which is where we wanted to be picking your brain anyway. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Did you get to check out Ryan's presentation?
Yeah, I was sitting here watching it, and it was amazing so far.
What do you think? Do you have anything? Do you have any insight before we dig into my stuff here?
Let me hear your stuff, and then I'll sort of pull up some sources and see if I can do some cross references for both of you guys.
Amazing. Sounds good. So just to start off with, we're looking at, our Ouroboros Chenubis phylactery, right? We have our lion-headed snake eating its tail, our agathodaimon, I wanted to show that this imagery continues well into the grimoire tradition. So this is a really famous sigil from the Lesser Key of Solomon. And look, in the center, you see a snake inscribed with the names of God going around as this protective magical seal, right? So here we have the Ouroboros phylactery, right? This is the main spell, and it says, a phylactery, a bodyguard against daimons, against phantasms, against every sickness and suffering, to be written on a leaf of gold or silver or tin or on hieratic papyrus. When worn, it works mightily, for it is the name of power of the great God and his seal. And it follows Chemephis, Sirphis, and then it gives us a bunch of these barbarous words, right? Yahweh, right?
Yep, the magical name. That's also a magical name of Dionysus, baby.
Absolutely.
I think
These are the names.
As far as I get it, when they're doing that, they're going, yeah, oh, it's like nervous system stuff again.
Yeah.
From the top to the bottom. And it's those 7 vowels for the 7 planets.
And and there's all the 7 magical chants that Hesychius talks about that are used in the mysteries.
You can do this in either with an ohm or with the EAL, but what you do is you reverberate the totality of speech. You, by enunciating it in a specific vibratory way, you're vibrating all of creation is the idea. With the ohm, you have the beginning and the ending, and it's the same thing with the EAL. You're going through all of sound and you're connecting to that transcendent sphere, right? So these are the names. The figure is like this. Let the snake be biting its tail. The names being written inside the circle made by the snake. And the characters are thus as follows. And then we have the Orphic aim of the dragon. Okay. The whole figure is drawn thus as given below with the spell. Protect my body and the entire soul of me. And when you have consecrated it, wear it. So this is a piece of magical armor written on gold. Right.
By the way, there's the name of Ion, which Ryan was talking about earlier in the stream, and you brought up the Ion figurine of the serpent, the Thanes character with the serpent around him. And that's Ion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's like a lion, a bull, an eagle, a man, a snake, a dragon, a lion. Make your mind up.
Well, that's the point, though. That's the point, because he's ever morphing, ever changing. Dying and rising, constantly going.
It's all the knowledge of time, all the types of time embodied.
Yeah, and Braxis too.
Right. So this would be,
and you find Abraxas in these too, by the way.
Oh well, Abraxas is, what is Abraxas but a snake with a lion head, right?
Yeah.
And what do we see there as the central image? A snake with, right? And we're going to get into more of it, but okay, I wanted to look at this though. If you look here in the middle of the line, the first beginning of the barbarous words, you'll see Chemephis, Sirphis. Okay, this is not actually barbarous words. These are actually referring to a specific god. This is where we get the connection to Anubis or to the Agathodaimon or to Abraxas. This connects us basically. I was reading this PhD thesis by Dr. Skinner. You can find it. It's an amazing thing where he's looking at all of the various imagery in the PGM, and he specifically is talking about the Ouroboros phylactery, and he's going into basically how this particular thing here, this Chemephis Shiris, is what's connecting us to the deity. So I wanted to look into this deeply. So I went and I found the Greek version of this. And we get, can you read this word for me, Neil, at the top here?
Kantharos. Sorry to put in.
Yeah, Kantharos.
Kantharos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Kantharos. I didn't know I was muted.
No worries. So Kantharos, and this is related to the dung beetle, okay? But it's more specifically related to specifically the god of the morning star, which is this dung beetle god. In the Egyptian, it's called Khepri. Okay?
Yeah.
But even more so, Khepri is the attendant god. He is just like Apollo. He's Simpragato to this god named Khnum. So here we have the scarab-headed god Khepri, who is that morning star, the light bringer, who helps show us.
If you go back real quick, you got look at where it says. Now, this is the reason why I cut you off is because you just said it. Look at it's on the 4th row down where it says Kantaru Sky Eye. Kantaru Sky Eye. and then that's the scarab, right?
Yeah,
It's got the, so you can see how is that. I think that's what they're referencing there.
absolutely. They're referencing that Egyptian deity. This is the word they're using. But look at the second definition here, too. A sort of drinking cup with large handles. And when I searched that specifically, these were the ones that were used in the rites of Dionysus. Only for the Dionysian rites. This is a special type of cup. So first, here's the scarab-headed god.
Not only is he a scarab-headed god, but the scarab itself is an analogy for the top of the head. When you look at a scarab, it's got the same markings as a head, and you find more often than not, that's what they're actually getting at: higher thought, higher mind, and things like resurrection style ideas. Well, the scarab itself being the poo roller that, you know, it rolls the sun, and then that's reborn as the scarab's reborn from poo in this alchemical lead to gold idea.
These
And
chthonic deities
this is the
are
light bringer
old.
too.
Right, he's the light bringer. In the Egyptian mythology, this is the morning star. This is the light bringer. This is the equivalent of Lucifer. And connected to the dung, this is also given huge Dionysus energy. And we got the Dionysus cup because, okay, that those animals that are associated with the decomposition are also related with Dionysus. One of his things is he is the lord of the flies, right? He's the lord of those decomposing insects. Medea is the vulture. The vulture is seen as the most sacred bird because it kills or it eats the dead and doesn't eat other birds. It doesn't eat its own. It only eats the dead, right? And so there's all this stuff going on with these recycling animals being sacred.
And that dung that you put in your crops, it's magic because that's dead material that comes out. That's smelly, dead. You can't eat it. It'll make you sick if you eat it. You can't eat dung. But when you put it in your crops, when you bury the dead, life rises out of it. Because what makes your soil fertile and makes the crops flourish is by putting manure and dung in there.
Absolutely.
So it's so amazing. It's magical. It really is.
They would make
really
dung
is,
cake in ancient Egypt and dry them on the wall. But if you could go back to that text, I'm going to show you something on there. Yeah, down there it says the tongue of the Apis bull.
Ah,
And the tongue of the Apis bull becomes Serapis.
Yeah.
yeah.
Osar Apis. Apis.
And what is the bottom half of Osar Apis's body?
Snakes.
Yeah, it's a snake. So that's the dragon's tongue right there.
Damn.
Yeah.
That was nice.
At least I can contribute something for the day. Let's just say.
I thought when you said dung, when you said dung, Dion, I thought you were going to say mushrooms because we've got this cup, skull, scarab analogy, stuff growing from poo. Surely mushrooms are going to be in there somewhere.
Oh, absolutely.
What? Yeah, you get the most sacred crop. You can call it a crop, right? The most sacred crop of all comes right from the dung. Not even in the soil, straight out of the dung.
Yeah. And
that must have told the ancients something. The ancients must have thought that was
guys,
special.
We're looking for the dragon. We know the dragon is Serapis. And now we have it here. The tongue of the Apis bull is Serapis. We have it on full display. The morning star, again, the dung, right? So we look at, here's one of these cups that was used in these Dionysian rites where they would be drinking their sacred wines, right? Here we have the Lightbringer god is connected to this creator god, Khnum. And Khnum was the flood-bringing god, okay? And what gets so wild with Khnum is that he is the inversion of Ammon. If you look on him, he has horns, but they're literally the inverted horns of Ammon. They're going the opposite direction.
Yeah,
okay? And
they're both the ram-headed god. They both have ram heads too, yeah.
They both have ram heads, but Khnum is a crocodile head. They both have ram horns, but Khnum is a crocodile head. And he is the one who ejaculates the Nile. It's
funny because Porphyry calls Khnum a ram for some reason. I wonder what he must have saw different iconography, you know?
He could have, but he could also just been focusing on the horns and the idea that him and Ammon, again, I think this is a Dionysus connection because we're getting that leader, that god on the earth, that chthonic deity, the inversion of Amun.
Well,
right?
You know that when Alexander the Great traveled to Ammon, and he was told, like, build my temple. He says, build the temple of Plutonios Ion. And then we find out that Plutonios Ion is an epithet for Serapis, who's going to be built there. That's the temple of Serapis. So Pluto, underground god, Pluto, and then Ion. Get it? Pluto and Ion. It's crazy. It's Dionysian and Plutonian. Because that's the same god ultimately. The underworld judge is Dionysus. Pluto, Dionysus. But in this particular Osiris, that in this particular case, because the Herodotus and Diodorus say Dionysus is Osiris. They're not even they are the same. But in this particular case, they're just combining them into one thing. Plutonios hyphenated Ion. That's Serapis.
It's they're all this power of resurrection. It's like the resurrection power itself is embodied in these gods. So I think, like, when Serapis was made, they were like, we need to put all these things together. So you've got to expect this, if they're
I can prove what you're just saying is true. Go ahead, continue. I can prove what you're saying is true.
Go for it, Neil. I'd love to hear it.
But no, I want to hear you finish. I'm going to pull it up for you.
So if it's mystery traditions we're dealing with, they're going to be, Lego kits all mashed together of all these different mystery traditions in one body. So you would hope that they would signify lots of things from these underworld resurrection gods. And this is the mystery god, isn't it? It's the going in these states of mind and coming back out again god, like the sun did in winter. That goes into the shamanic state and then comes back out. I think that Num character was a representation of Capricorn with Aquarius next to it, which is the flood period, which is the shamanic period of the zodiac when the sun's dead and trying to come back in January. That kind of idea.
That's beautiful. It makes a lot of sense. It makes perfect sense. And I wanted to show us until Neil gets what he's looking for.
Oh, go ahead. I'm going to take me a second to find it, but I will find it. I already found the book. I'm just finding the passage right now.
So I wanted to look at other phylacteries, other protection spells, other magical armor. And the most common one that we see is this figure, Abraxas, Chenubis, this snake with a lion's head. And these are two variations of these talismans. And even that word Chenubis eventually turns into the word Canarius, according to Dr. Skinner in his thesis, which is the same word they're using in Latin for these magical talismans.
Did you get a root for Canarius? I've never heard that one. I know this guy as Yaldabaoth, and I know those vowels again, that Yaldabaoth.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So
but again, the gematria, I remember, is processional or something like that, or I remember it was related to calendars. And I've seen a guy as well actually relate. I'm not sure if it was true. I'd have to really research it, but he'd seen that this outline of Yaldabaoth actually fits over the Orion Nebula, which was weird. But take that as a bit of a pinch of salt.
The big thing that Dr. Skinner is telling us is he's saying that these were golden plates worn over the breast. This is the magical layman. This is the these pieces of gold that were inscribed with these magical words or these magical names of God were these laymans, And then he's getting at where do we see this? Okay, trying to find where it said that part about.
I will also say, everybody out there, don't you think it looks like a cock and balls?
Yeah. Anyway, I'll send it to you. It's in this Dr. Skinner's stuff that he's talking about, but they're connecting this Chenubis here to this particular.
You want to see how I can prove that this is the god of all the mysteries? Eleusinian, Samothracian, Phrygian. Watch this. So there's two sources that I'm going to cross-reference here. The first one I want to start with is Tacitus, because I think he does a better job of telling the story. But Plutarch tells a similar story with a slightly different carry-on with it. So let me share my screen. I got Lacus Curtius. I love this website. That's good translations here. So this is the origin of the god. He's talking about Serapis, okay? So what happened is Vespasian went to go to the sanctuary in Alexandria. This is in the late 1st century. And He apparently a guy walked up to Vespasian who was blind, and Vespasian spit in his hand, and then like Christed his eyes, and then he was able to see again. And then another dude walked into the temple because Vespasian's just sitting there. He's just praying to Serapis. And these guys are walking in the temple. These lame and sick people are walking in the temple. And Vespasian keeps touching them, and their arms would grow back. It's very much like Jesus. So then, apparently, this is how he explains it. He goes, the origin of this god has not been generally treated by our authors. The Egyptian priests tell the following story. Let me make this bigger so people can see it. Tell the following story, that when King Ptolemy, the first of the Macedonians, to put the power of Egypt on a firm foundation, was giving the new city of Alexandria walls, temples, and religious rites. There appeared to him in his sleep a vision of a young man of extraordinary beauty and of more than human stature, who warned him to send his most faithful friends to Pontus, Asia Minor, and bring his statue. And by back then, that would have been the who would have been there? That would have been the descendants of Mithridates. It's still in the Hellenist. This is 320, 310 BC. This is a long time ago. So, anyways, I mean the ancestors of Mithridates. I mean that's what I meant. That sort of Hellenistic kingdom is still there. That's what I meant to say. So, anyways, he tells his friend to bring the statue. The vision said that this act would be a happy thing for the kingdom, and that the city that received the god would be a great and famous. After these words, the youth seemed to be carried to heaven in a blaze of fire. So he gets a vision of this youth. You don't know who the youth is yet. He tells him to go find this statue, and he goes, go to Pontus, find this statue, and bring it here, set up a temple here. Remember, there's no temple of Serapis yet. This is before that. So Ptolemy, moved by this miraculous omen, disclosed his nocturnal vision to the Egyptian priest, whose business is to interpret such things. When they proved to know little of Pontus in foreign countries, he questioned Timotheus. By the way, Timotheus is a famous classical source. He writes about Attis. He writes about other gods as well. An Athenian from the clan of the Eumolpidae. That's the Eleusinian Mysteries ruling family. So, like, you know how the Levites are rulers of the Judean priesthood?
Yeah.
That's the same equivalent for the Eleusinian Mysteries. The Eumolpidae. That means the word means like good singers. They're the singer clan of the Eleusinian Mysteries. So, anyways, so Timotheus, an Athenian, a clan of the Eumolpidae, whom he had called from Eleusis, see, told you, to preside over the sacred rites. So, number one, we don't have Serapis yet, but he's calling one of the ancient family members of an ancient priesthood of the Eleusinian Mysteries to come down to Alexandria and set up the priesthood there. So we already have one aspect of the mysteries. The Eleusinian famous family is coming here to help start this priesthood. That's number one. And asked him what this religion was and what the divinity meant. Timotheus learned by questioning men who had traveled to Pontus that there was a city called Sinope, and that there, not far from there, was the temple of Jupiter Dis. You know who that is? That's the underworld. That's the underworld Dispater, right? That's the underworld Pluto of the Roman religion, of the Etruscan religion. So we have Etruscan mysteries now getting brought into the fold. So we have Eleusinian mysteries, Etruscan mysteries. Let's keep going. Long famous among the natives, there sits beside the god a female figure who is which most call Proserpina. All right, there we go. There's the Cori. That's the Cori right there. She has to be there, of course. You can't have anything without the Cori.
It says the Queen of the Dead.
You need the Queen of the Dead. And then it says the Ptolemy, although prone to superstitious fears as to the nature of the kings, when he once felt secure, being more eager for pleasures than religious rites, began gradually to neglect the matter and turn his attention to other things. So he's like, he was about to pull through with this, and then he sort of like got sidetracked. And then, until the same vision, now terrible and insistent, threatened ruin upon the king himself and his kingdom unless his orders were carried out. Then Ptolemy directed that ambassadors and gifts should be dispatched to King Skidrothemis. He ruled over the people. That's the ancestor of Mithridates, by the way. He ruled over the people of Sinope at the time. And when the embassy was about to sail, he instructed them to visit Pythian Apollo. There we go. There's another ancient mystery
Yeah.
religion. The Delphi, the mysteries of Delphi. So then they go to the Pythian Apollo. The ambassadors found the sea favorable. That's what the virgin priestess tells them to do what this god is saying. So all these mysteries are coming together, right? And the answer was the oracle was not uncertain. Apollo bade them, he made them go on and bring the image of his father. What? But leave that of his sister. Wait, what? Now you might people say, oh, so it's Zeus? Not necessarily. I mean, we already have Jupiter Dis, we already have Eumalpidai, we already have Proserpina. So it's something else. But Apollo calls him his father. Weird, right? So now we have Eleusinian mysteries, Etruscan mysteries, and the Delphic mysteries. It keeps going. It gets even crazier. When the ambassadors reached Sinope, they delivered the gifts, requested the messages to the king, said the dreamers. He was all uncertainty, now fearing the god, and again began terrified by threats of opposition of his people. Often he was tempted by gifts and the promises of the ambassadors. In the meantime, 3 years passed, during which Ptolemy did not lessen his zeal his appeals. He increased the dignity of his ambassadors, the number of his ships, and the quantity of gold offered. Then a terrifying vision appeared to Skidrothemis, warning him not to hinder longer the purposes of the god. As he still hesitated, various disasters, diseases, and evident anger of the gods growing heavier from day to day beset the king. He called an assembly of his people and made them known the god's orders, the vision and that appeared to him in Ptolemy, and the misfortunes that were multiplying upon them. The people opposed their king. They were jealous of Egypt, afraid for themselves, so gathered about the temple of the god. At this point, the tale becomes stranger, for the tradition says that the god himself, Serapis, voluntarily embarking on the fleet. So he's like, I'm sick of all this drama. I'm just going to do it myself. The statue of Serapis in Sinope, which, by the way, was actually a statue of Pluto. It was actually a statue of Hades with Cerberus next to him. We still know what it looks like to this day.
You can see in Serapis himself that there's clearly a Pluto thing going on there. He's even got the cup on his head with all the wealth in there.
So this statue comes to life, gets up, gets on a boat, and travels all the way to Alexandria by itself. It's a miracle. A temple befitting of the city was erected in the quarter called Rakotis. There had previously been on that spot an ancient shrine dedicated to Serapis and Isis. Such is the most popular account on the origin of the arrival of the gods. And then it talks about this. This is the whole part that I wanted to get into. Yet I am not aware that there are some who maintain that the god was brought from Seleucia in Syria. Still others claim that Ptolemy introduced the god, but that the place from which he came was Memphis, once a city and bulwark of ancient Egypt. Many regard him, the god himself, to be identical with Asclepius. So now we have the mysteries of Pergamum. That's like 5 right there, because he cures the sick.
Let's not forget Osiris and the Apis bull. Those are
That's
different.
That's what it says next. Some as Osiris, the oldest god among these peoples, and then some identify him with Jupiter as the supreme lord of all things. The majority, however, arguing from the attributes of the god that are seen on his statue, or that from their own conjecture that he is Father Dis, the underworld Pluto. So think about this. All these mysteries are all mentioned in this story as if it's like, as if Tacitus is trying to say, this Serapis priesthood that was set up in Alexandria is all of the mysteries syncretized into one thing.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
And by the way, I don't have to read the Plutarch one. Plutarch, just going to share my screen really quick, if you don't mind, then I'll be done. I'm not going to read this one, but Plutarch tells the same story in the book called On Isis and Osiris. If you see this, he says Ptolemy Soter saw in a dream the colossal statue of Pluto. He tells the same story in a different way. There's some different details. People can go look for that themselves. I don't have to repeat the whole story again.
That god being somewhat to unite the empire, you can find statues of Serapis, usually in a serpent form, with Isis in a serpent form, as far as around here in northern England. So it got out very far from, if it did come from Alexandria, if Alexandria is not just used as an icon of knowledge there.
It's hard to say, right?
Well, Alexander's where all this knowledge gets brought together anyway. So there can be some truth to this story. That the idea that they're taking pieces from all these different mystery cults and sort of attributing it to Serapis into this super mystery cult.
Oh yeah,
and this is where Christianity comes out of Alexandria.
You can derive that just by looking at the iconography of the statue. You can say, well, that's bit of this, bit of that. There we go. There's Serapis.
All right. Well, Dion messaged and said that he does have time to do his presentation now. So, Dion, do you want to take away and give us your presentation?
Awesome.
Sure thing. Let's see how we're going to start. From what I've heard, we talked about dragons and the dragon energy as a form of time, energetics in the body, mysteries, electricity. Talking about Alexandria as a focal point of where all this coalesced: Greek mysteries, Egyptian mysteries, Etruscan mysteries, Anatolian mysteries, Mithraic. Let's see if the presentation I could package up some of that stuff in a visual form. This nonverbal communication. First, here's the image of Glykon. Glykon in the 2nd century was created by Alexander. There's a guy named Alexander in what we call modern day Bulgaria or Turkey, that region right there of the Black Sea area. He invented a snake cult, and he even told people about it. Hey, there's going to be a snake is coming, Glykon, and it means sweet. I think the etymology of it comes down to
It means sugar or sweet.
Yeah, sweetie. And so he told them that sweetie is going to show up and give them prophecies. What people say is that he built a contraption and put a live snake in it, maybe had puppet's head. Either way, it was a machine with a live snake combined, and he did some trickery, some Houdini stuff, and people were convinced. And there was people that weren't convinced. Right away, people said, hey, this guy's a charlatan. But the regular folks were like, nah, we like this. And it would give prophecies. And he had people involved. He had actors in the crowd that he could heal them. And a classic, you know what, Snappy, take it away. You know about Glykon.
Oh yeah, I got a bunch of wild shit to add because I was actually reading this the other day. Okay, so one of the greatest of all of the Greek and Roman writers ever, Lucian, wrote about this, and he writes a book on the life of Alexander, and he talks about how he's a fraud. Now, we have to bear in mind that there isn't been a ton of evidence about Alexander outside of Lucian. Lucian is an Epicurean and a satirist, and he's out to attack all of these various mystery cults. But he is our greatest source for all of this, and he paints Alexander as this cult leader, and he has a buddy, and they purposely go on this whole big conspiracy. They set up this cult in his hometown. First, before they do it, they go to the Temple of Apollo. They bury these gold tablets. Then they make a big deal of finding the gold tablets, and the gold tablets tell of the arrival of Glykon, as Dion was hinting at. And then they had literally a giant sock puppet with a snake in it. And people used to do this thing, and they would incorporate some legitimate mystery stuff. Like they took these, you would make a scroll, and then you would seal it with clay, and then you would go and give it to the priest, and then the priest would have Glykon look over it, and then they would basically would tell you what the future was, and they would say that they could actually read what was on the text without breaking the clay. But it's one of these things where, like, Lucian is claiming that he had men all in the crowd that would talk to everyone and figure out what everyone's scroll said before they went and gave it. And all of these different charlatan type tricks.
And then he would also yell to the crowd and go, "You Christian spies, you Epicurean spies, get out." He would get real nasty because he knew there were spies in his crowd because they're trying to prove him wrong and shit. They're trying to catch him.
He was making money off this. He got so popular that he got involved in politics, and that little snake puppet could determine the outcome of some politics. That's very dangerous.
And this is what got him killed. And this is when the Romans were just like, look, we'll tolerate your mystery cult until you try to play politic, and now we squash you, right? As we see all across Roman history. But another funny and interesting thing with Glykon is, Ryan, one of our favorite magicians of all time, Alan Moore, is a professed
Oh, yeah.
worshiper of Glykon.
Is that what it is, Glykon? Oh,
Yes.
no, Alan.
He sells Glykon toys.
We know why,
He makes
don't
little
we?
toys.
He sells Glykon toys, but
Does
part of
he?
it is the kitschiness and it's the humor of it. Who better to worship than a literal scam? Because he doesn't even know what's truth and real. That's a whole big thing in his magical thing. It's about the absurdity. So
Yeah.
what's more absurd than riding through time on a snake puppet?
You know, that talks and gives oracles. So to me, this is a form of dragon's tongue. But also, I'm going to take it in a different direction. Go to the next slide. Right there. Now, here's a picture of a Glykon coin from Bulgaria, 2nd century, and he has a beard on it. He has a beard as well as he has the basilisk.
You see the crown on the serpent's head?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. He has the crown of the rooster as well as the beard.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And this is what we're going to get into. These bearded snakes, how this is going to connect to Serapis, Sabazios, to Zeus, and I'll show you the whole.
They call it Agathos daemon, the good
That's
daemon.
right. We'll end up there too.
Yeah.
So go to the next slide.
I have one thing to say on that. I don't know if you're going to get into it later, but when I was looking up that feature on the caduceus, that they'd have the bearded, crested
Yep.
parts.
We're going to get into that too. So hit the next
Wow.
slide.
Okay.
So
Well,
right here,
I'll leave it there then. I'll leave it there.
yeah, we'll get
because
at that point we'll have you explain it. The intertwined serpents with the bearded snake.
Yeah.
Here Nicander in the Theriac, because we talked about the Theriac, we talked about that last time. He has formulas in there for snake repellents and different snake formulas, but he also talks about bearded snakes, as well as Nonus in the Dionysica. The Dionysica talks about bearded snakes and Maenads giving offerings with these bearded snakes. Here is a vase that shows a Maenad with the thyrsus holding a snake, and the little snake is bearded, if you can see it on the far left. This theme, it's subtle. It's very subtle in the Dionysic mysteries that you'll find the bearded snake imagery. So go to the next picture. Right there. There's that staff we're talking about.
That's
This
what the
is
priests would hold in their hands in all Attica, but all over the Mediterranean.
Yeah, and this is an Etruscan one, and it has a bearded snake on it, which is a little different.
Oh,
and
wow. I just noticed that now.
And you're going to see those on the Sabazios.
The Orthodox patriarchs hold almost identical staffs even to this day.
Yep.
In Christianity.
The beard seems important, though.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, we'll find out why. We'll keep going. So go to the next picture.
I mean,
what I heard no, you're going to explain it. Tell us something.
Oh, shit. You just got...
Oh, you want me to explain it? Oh, you want me to do it now? Okay, I thought you were going to carry on.
I thought you froze for a second. I thought you got like...
No. So I had... I looked into this because it was driving me wild. Like, what? Okay, first of all, what would a beard mean symbolically? There's something about age there, isn't there? And like masculinity. And what I was reading was obviously these were a standard for messengers. So often, like the two messengers in a war for either side, these two Hermes kind of characters would actually sit and watch a war, even though they were from different sides, and have a drink together and have something to eat and just watch it as non-partisan viewers. But what I gathered from this was that if you see them without a beard, it's a time of peace. If you see them with a beard, it's in time of war. It's got something to do with that masculine principle being added to these peace staffs. You know, this is a symbol of the two poles coming together. So it's got a masculine twist to it. So apparently these were a wartime thing. I've not quite buried down into it.
You might be onto something. So go to the next pic then. All right. So here's how I say it. Melichios. Zeus Melichios. This comes out of Sicily. This is a form of where they worship Zeus as a snake that has a beard. In one of the versions, he gets with Demeter, Malaphoros. And well, go to the next image, actually.
Whoa.
And so that's when Zeus rapes his sister, Demeter, becomes a snake and rapes his sister. And some of the versions, he has a beard.
So it's the underworld Dispater, the way we just talked about. It's
And
the underworld Zeus.
yeah, and to take it
That's what
further,
that
go to
is.
the next image.
It's the chthonic Zeus.
He does it to Persephone as well.
There it
He
is.
turns into a snake. So he turns into a snake and rapes his sister, has a daughter, then turns into a snake and rapes his daughter. And in the older iconography, he has a beard. He
By the way,
worships
the son that's born is, well, in the first case, it's Zagreus, Iacchus, and then Demeter's son is also called Iacchus, but it's not. There's two different Iacchuses.
Yeah, Demeter's son is also Plutus, right?
Plutus,
Yes,
yeah.
born. Yeah.
And
I think you get it.
he has a nickname of Iacchus too.
I think
Oh,
I've just
you
had
think
that
with the
lightning
vagrant
flash
stuff.
of. I think I've just had that lightning flash of Zeus from the beginning, which takes me back to the beginning. I think I figured this out. Do you remember I was saying essentially this storm god character is the weather systems, whether it's cosmic weather in the zodiac or the weather in the actual weather or the weather inside of us. Well, this is that underworld weather. This is your urges and drives. This is rapey Zeus going for it, and it's like Melusine, who's a figment of the unconscious. She has snake tails as well, snake legs. That it's very hard to grab a hold of. Doesn't Heracles have such thing? He's trying to find his way back somewhere. Meets a snaky underworld chap. Who
Yeah,
he
Oh
can't
my god!
quite
Oh my
grab.
god!
Amazonian
Wait till you see what I
queen.
just found. Wait till you see what
The
I just
Amazonian
found.
Right,
queen,
so-
he winds up sleeping with her in Crimea.
Yeah, so I'm going for this Dispater character is like the underworld weather in you. It's the urges. It's the oh, I'm horny today, I'm not horny tomorrow. I'm feeling vengeful today, I'm not feeling vengeful tomorrow. That kind of thing.
Well, this is such a huge, important part of the mystery, as we see time and time again, right? You cannot abuse the muse. You have to approach her and see her in her equality, right? This is that those urges run amok into their most violent and horrific form, right?
Well, it's funny because you said abuse the muse.
Nice.
That'll play into the next story. Go to the next
Can,
image.
can I show you
Yeah,
something?
go for
real
it.
quick?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, let
Pull
Neil
this
see.
down. Can you pull this down for 1 second? All right. So this is a staff from some patriarch. But then I found a real picture of a real one that's still around today. And if you look at it, it looks like it's got a beard.
Oh, there they are. Yep,
You see
there
it?
they are. There they
Am I
are.
crazy? Am I crazy for seeing the
No,
beard?
no,
there?
no. We're gonna
No.
understand more by the time we
Oh
end up
my
in
God. All
Alexandria.
right, keep going,
It'll
keep
make
going.
sense.
Keep going.
All right, let me pull you back up here. Here we go, Dion.
All right, here we
That's
go.
a big one.
And this is where we're going to need Neil's expertise because we're going to get into some things I don't know about. Cadmus. So Cadmus fights a bearded dragon. And this deals with Ares, the god of war.
Fire-breathing dragon by that too.
Yeah. And he's also famous for introducing the Pelasgian script or the Phoenician script into the Greek alphabet.
Yep.
So the person that kills the dragon, the bearded dragon that we see right there, introduces the script, that dragon's tongue. And there's more to the story.
Oh my god! I never even
And let's
thought
get
of
more
that.
into it because his sister wife, Harmonia, is also turned into a snake. They're both turned into snakes because they piss off the muse at a certain point. So the muse
What
turns
was
them
his
into
name again,
snakes.
Dion?
And guess what? When they mate, who's their daughter? Semele,
Yeah.
the mother of Dionysus.
Mother
It
of
goes-
Dionysus.
And it's going back to this bearded snake myth.
Yep.
And there's more to the story. Go to the next image. It got skipped right there. Oh, but that's them right there actually mating because they're turned into snakes. They petition the gods and says, "Hey, we love each other." And they go, "Well, we'll make you snakes." They put them to the Elysian fields, and they're happy as black snakes forever. Because the black snakes will figure into the next episode with the dragons from Asia. But go to the next pic.
Damn.
And so here's one of the parts of the mystery. We've talked about the dragon's hair, the dragon's blood, the dragon's fire, dragon's skin. Now we're talking about dragon's teeth. In this mystery, Cadmus throws the seeds in the ground and he sows them. And who do they turn into? Spartans.
Ray Harryhausen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Remember the Ray Harryhausen thing with all the skeletons and the J's? Yeah, that was great. Loved it.
So they put the dragon seed in the ground, the dragon's teeth, and they turn into Spartans.
Damn, the Spartans spawn from dragon teeth. That's nuts.
And go to the next image. This happens with Jason. There's Jason sowing dragon's teeth.
Wow.
that turn into these
The
these
field of
sparkles.
Mars, field of Aries, that's the grove
Yeah,
of Mars.
the field of Aries. So in the dragon's teeth to turn into and so this is all heading somewhere. Go to the next image. Right there. There's your Agathodiamon.
Agathos Daimon. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
By the way, do you know what they did with these in Egypt during the Ptolemaic period? These were the way, you know how we put up gnomes in our gardens, they become like magic charms. They put these in their gardens as charms to ward off evil spirits.
Oh yeah.
So you would walk to, and they would have Priapus ones, different versions. Some of them would have phalluses hanging off of them. Some of them was just Priapus. Yeah.
These have ones of Hecate as well.
Yeah.
With a large spread vulva, but most of them got destroyed by the Christians.
But that's what they called what they called them. So yeah, they had different versions of them, different titles. They had the Priapus ones, the Hecate ones, but they called them all Agathoi Daemonoi. Like that's what they called them all. Great, good daemons.
Noble spirits.
Noble spirits. Yeah.
Yeah, we still have them not in gnomes, but in jack-o'-lanterns for Halloween. It's the same idea. It's a scary thing, scaring away scary things. And you know, the serpent's top of the food chain as far as terror goes.
Oh yeah.
And it also connects to the Roman version, right? The Lares, right? In Laurentia, that great goddess again, the silent one, Muta. And we'll get into this in my part of the presentation.
Awesome.
You know, and what do you notice on this snake? It has a beard. It has a little beard right there. And that gives it a symbol of authority.
Yeah, that's very obvious too. That's not even like subtle. You can see that.
Oh yeah. And that's from Alexandria. Go to the next image. Right there. This is Komombo in Egypt. And
it's got the caduceus like we just saw.
And look what's above it. Look what's above it. It's the Aegis shield with Medusa's head on it.
Oh no, what?
My God. Wow. This is Dion is on fire right now. That's a Thyrsus on the right, a caduceus on the left, and Medusa on top. And it's got a beard and a crown.
And this is packaging up what we call the Greco-Roman Egyptian mysteries together, Mithraic, Anatolian mysteries, that Turkey stuff right there. And go to the next image.
Wait. What temple is that? What is
that's called Kom? That's called Kom Ombo or El Kom, and that's in Egypt because it packages up that Greco-Egyptian really good.
Is that Alexandria? I think that's Alexandria, right?
Yeah, out of Alexandria. You know, and so here we go. We were talking about Serapis and Isis together.
Oh yeah.
As snakes with the bodies of snakes, and they got a kind of a dreadlock hair because we'll talk about that in another episode. That's like the snake hair. People don't know that's referred to as snake hair, the dreadlocks, and some of them.
And one of them has a solar crown, the other one has a lunar crown.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, this could be Osiris and Isis, and they team up, and we know in the myth that they have a child named Horus. Now, we'll see how Horus plays into this if you go to the next pic.
Yeah, well, Horus the child is the one who goes and he has to get vengeance on the killer of Osiris Set, right?
Oh, yeah.
Horus the child who's born at the winter solstice does the will of the father and avenges the father.
Yeah.
Hippocrates, isn't it?
That's him right there.
Yeah. The Alexandrian
Hippocrates means in Greek Horus the child. Harpu Herod.
Yeah. Well, here's Horus the child right here. We know that because he's wearing a side lock, which we'll discuss in a minute. But this is called a sipu, and what they're used for is a talisman to ward off snakes and scorpions, dangerous animals. But it's also could be used in other ways. You could use it as a formula because we know those dangerous animals. You could use their venom to get high. So it's also a formula, it's a repellent, and you could use it astrotheology. You know, you could say that, okay, that's a Scorpio, that's a Glykon system.
It's like
when interpret it different ways.
It's like when Jesus says to the disciples, I give you the power to stand on the scorpions and serpents.
Yeah, definitely.
He is standing on them, you know what I mean?
Well, right here, he's standing on, it deals with Sobek. And that deals with the inundation of the Nile at the Helical Rising of Sirius when the crocodiles come out. And they do the crocodile rituals of Sobek, collecting the fat, which deals with the mesh, the anointing oils of the pharaohs on their feet, as well as they would take the crocodile dung. They use that with acacia in the woman's vagina as a form of a contraceptive because of lactic acid. They would take the crocodile fats, they took the crocodile skin as armor, and they would rape the crocodiles in these ceremonies. It took a group of men, they would have to tilt them and flip them over to rape them.
Yeah,
and so the crocodiles were afraid.
They're always up to something. I
Oh
was about
yeah,
to say also the fact that posture. First of all, in Egypt, it's not very common for you to face forwards. Normally, it's off to the side.
yeah.
So you got Bess there, just above him. That's like one of the few deities that actually does that a lot of the time. I think the reason why it's being done here is that we've got this Sophia kind of a pose where we're polarizing what's in the hands again. It's this polar stuff once again.
Oh yeah.
To separate something like that is to divide into two.
And he has poles there too on the staff. It's the Wa scepter, and the other scepter is the that deals with the lily. Now, best on top, they found the best vases in ancient times from Egypt that can contain hallucinogenics. That blue lily, Syrian rue, other things in there too. You know,
I've had
even
blue
mushrooms,
lily.
which we're going to get into a little later in another episode, the Egyptian mushroom connection. But there's a lot on just going on this talisman right here. And also you can see that Heru or Horus has a side lock. Go to the next image. And I'll show you what there it is, that side lock on the side of the head. Because we've talked about Medea's hair and Medusa's hair, weaponized hair.
Shiva's hair as well.
Yeah, Shiva's hair. And she has a snake, the Uraeus, on her crown right there. So besides having the side lock, now the side lock is symbolic of youth in Egypt. That's for the youngins. But you can see she has the symbol of power, which is that snake on top of the head right there. Snakes in the hair. Go to the next image. Now, when you grow up, you don't have the side lock anymore. You get what's called the beard. Male or female, it's a fake beard they attach to the pharaohs in ancient times, as well as the Uraeus on the head, the snake. So you have the snake and the beard together being added. So he's adding a snake to his head in a fake beard. This is King
I'd
Tut.
like to add,
To
I'd like
become
to add
that
as well
image.
to that.
And he has a whip, which is the flail. We showed you the whip and the
shepherd's
crook.
crook. Shepherd's crook.
And that crook is also the crook of divination, which deals with
augury.
The auguries. But there's a little more to that beard. Let's get into that beard, that snake beard. Here we go. So there you go, the crook and the flail. Well, they use that flail to collect what's called the tears of Osiris, the mastic, the temple incense that was used as well in the Jewish mysteries and Egypt. They would rake and collect it and get the gum off it. Go to the next image. See, because naturally, goats chew on that plant in nature, and they collect the resin in their beards, the temple incense, the tears of Osiris. So they would cut the goat beards, weave them, and the pharaohs would wear them as a sign of power. So you got to put a snake on your forehead, and you put that beard on, and you're the leader. You're the dragon. So let's go to the next image.
Could I add to the serpent? Obviously, the serpent goes up the back as it would. It's this same energy we were talking about before. Comes over the top of the head and comes there. But also next to it, when you're a bit further up the ladder, there's also a vulture there, which I'm assuming would go back to that kind of Promethean vulture that was Medea, and this feminine principle as well as a more masculine version of the life force in that serpent there.
Yep. So in ancient Egypt, they're encoding this stuff symbolically, and that's why when you go to Alexandria, they put it all together and they sent it out, to the Mediterranean. Go to the next image. Right there. So this is a Set, which is Horus's uncle, who killed his father, but he also kills the dragon or the snake, Apopis, Apop. And look where he's hitting him at, in the tongue. You got to get the dragon in the tongue. It's an archetype. That's just where you're going to get him at. That's the place to be. And we know the story of Set and Horus, because he battles his uncle, and the only way to get rid of him, he puts his semen on a piece of lettuce and feeds him a piece of lettuce with the semen, and that's how he beats his uncle.
Do you know that kind of lettuce is basically opium, don't you? It's got like a you break it open, It's got like a latex in there. You can actually take a lettuce at home, boil it up in some water, drink the juice that you get out of it, and you will have the best night's sleep you've ever had for that same reason.
It's a sedative. And so what else comes out of Alexandria there, where all this imagery comes out of? Go to the next image. That's the PGM.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from.
There's the donkey-headed god right there.
Yeah, and that's set. And we've done different episodes on how that connects to the onolatry and how the donkeys in Islam, how Muhammad goes to heaven on a donkey, Barak, he goes around the Kaaba on a donkey. He gets
By the
tongue.
way,
I would
The,
put money on the fact that foreleg there, his leg at the front, is the same angle as the axis of the ecliptic, and he's got 2 poles. Sorry, go on,
oh,
Neil.
nice. That's a good point. Now, the same book that I just referenced from Tacitus that tells a story about Serapis, in that same chapter, I'm not even kidding, in that same chapter, he starts talking about he talks about the real Exodus story, the historical one that happens in the 700s BC, not 1300 BC. And he says that this dude Musaeus was taking these Israelites out to the desert, and they were thirsty. It wasn't 40 years, only 7 days. On the 7th day, a pack of wild asses leads them to water, and they're saved because they brought to die of thirst. And then it says Tacitus then goes, from that day forward, they worship the image of the animal that led them to salvation, the donkey. So he's saying that Yahweh is a donkey head god.
Yeah. Well, they talked about that one when they go into the Holy of Holies. They see a donkey-headed god in there, and his tongue is tied, and he comes out, and he can't even tell him what he saw. That oldest image of Christ on the cross, he has a donkey head. But,
Yep.
There's more to this. Let's go to the next image.
But we also know, too, that the donkey is deeply associated, right, with a lot of the magical tradition, right?
Yeah.
Think of Lucius Apuleius. Think of Dionysus. Think
The symbol of metamorphosis.
right? The symbol of metamorphosis and change, because within the cult of Cybele, there's all this stuff. Lucius Apuleius just tells it right out when he's mocking them, right? The donkey carries the statue and is the beast of burden. But then when he dies, he still is a beast of burden because he becomes the drum skin that the priests then beat, right? They continue beating him even after his death, but he becomes that reverberation of the sacred song that's necessary to enter the trance. And so the donkey's always said to be the highest rewarded because he was the lowest.
You ready for
Go
this?
through the lowest to rise to the highest.
Can I show you something real quick?
Sure.
All right, let me show you something. This is cool. Ready for this? This is found from Pompeii. All right. So we frieze in Pompeii called the Sacred Procession with Hercules and Venus. And I think Hercules is marrying Venus or something crazy. Look on the left, you have the serpent coiled around a tree, and you have them carrying some sort of temple. There's Hercules, right? And then there's Venus. What is she doing? Her 2 sons, Priapus. Look at he's flashing you, and Eros. Wow. Priapus and Eros are her 2 sons. Hercules is right there. Ready for that? This is in Pompeii. So this is before anywhere between somewhere between, and latest it could be at 79 AD. That's the oldest this could be. Ready for this? The donkey is carrying some sort of image of a rock or something.
Wow.
Well,
amazing.
That deals with the Kybali, and we'll get more into that. Why we need the donkey? Because we need the donkey, the hand sign, and the snake to complete the pattern. If you go back, there you go. So we talked about. Somebody said earlier that's a mathematical symbol. We know that's a Greek symbol to sign. Those are rudras. In the past episodes in India, the magical hand signs, nonverbal communication in Egypt. This is. Besides counting, it was musical notation, as well as pharaohs would do these signs. And I just want to point that out, that the hand sign, the snake, and the donkey go together. We'll go to the next image.
And the donkey is what carries Dionysus down to Hades. When he's with Hercules, by the way. In the book called Frogs, or the play called Frogs.
Well, the donkey is super important because Muhammad rides the donkey to go to heaven. Jalal comes on a donkey. Muhammad goes around the Kaaba on a talking donkey that he got from Egypt called Yafur.
Are you going down the route of
the donkey plays?
Are you going down the route of? Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, in Christianity, the donkey plays in as well as Christ tells him to go get him a donkey so he can ride into town.
As far as I can determine,
that's very important because you'll understand how this connects in a second. because there's a hairpin that they found right there in Alexandria. And that little hairpin is a Sabazios hand sign.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
it
That,
is.
that was in Alexandria. And go to the next image and we'll unpack Sabazios, how this puts it together. Now on the Sabazios hand sign, normally the bent fingers have the snakes. We know Sabazios is with horses. He has a big thing dealing with horses. He rides horses, and a lot of the iconography, they'll show the horse. And there's snakes and
Thracian
horses.
rider.
Yeah, snakes, horses, and hand signs and beards are part of Sabazios' iconography. So he's going to get a beard, he's going to get snakes, he's going to get this hand sign, and he'll get a horse sometimes, the Sky Father. And he's packaged up, and it deals with Alexandria, Anatolia, Greco-Egyptian stuff, Etruscan stuff. It deals with Dionysus. It deals with
Dionysus, yeah.
a whole lineage coming together. And so what some people posit is that if Dionysus is alcoholic, the Sabazios had an element of mushrooms dealing with it that deals with the thunder. And go to the next image, and I'll unpack it a little more.
Yeah, Carl Ruck gets into that quite a bit.
So
Yeah.
here's the Sabazios right there.
He's got the
He's
moon.
doing the hand sign in both. He's got it up right there.
That's a lunar bowl on his feet.
Yep. And on his head.
Yeah, it's very lunar. Yeah.
And he's got the hand signs, throwing it up right there on each side.
Damn, that's a gang member.
Yeah. And go to the next image. So they call this the hand of God. And sometimes I don't even need the person, just that it's coming through the vortex, that sign.
The
Through the
Benedictio.
circle.
It's the Benedictio. Yeah.
And that sign means a lot to them. It's in ancient times, everyone was throwing up signs for different reasons.
Yeah,
But
this was
go to the next image.
very ancient.
And this is how I'll tie it together. I think it's the last image is the next one. Right there. The beloved John.
Look at that.
Who he tells to go get the donkey. Go get the donkey, John.
Yep.
The one who becomes the new Christ, who takes over, and he tells him, hey, mother, this is your new son.
Yeah, he's a successor.
Yep, it's John that goes to Anatolia there and takes out the temple of Artemis. John, the one that never has a beard, the one that's laying on his lap, the one that his
Always
mom
looks very
tells him,
feminine. Always looks very feminine too.
and his mom tells him, his mom is Mary Salome, and tells him, my son is going to sit at the right hand of you in at the kingdom of heaven. And he tells him, hey, you're going to drink the same cup as me? And he says, yes, I will drink that same cup. And that same cup deals with the hand sign and snakes.
You know what this is? This is the true vine. What's it called? The ampelos. You know how Dionysus has his ampelos, which means vine? It's Jesus and his ampelos. It doesn't have to necessarily be Zeus and his Ganymede. It could be Dionysus and ampelos.
I mean, John is in the zodiac. He is Aquarius. He's the cupbearer. And Aquarius, when you look at all the really old imagery, Aquarius has his bottom out for the same reasons that, Jesus was doing his thing. You know, what's it called? The thing that goes up people's bottoms with the oil. Alabastron.
Check this out real quick. Go ahead.
So he is that character. And that I'm determining that this is basically saying 666, which is all these processional numbers again. I just see it every time. Can you see that he's actually got a caduceus running up the center of his chest?
Yeah.
On that image with the two, it's always the same stuff. It's always drugs, pole stuff, this internal energy systems, and this particular season in the sky, which is between Sagittarius and Aquarius, and it's like this shamanic season of the underworld. The reason why Janus has the keys and Kibali has the keys, Janus is January, which is Aquarius. It's all the same stuff, and it's the drugs. It's the drugs and the underworld journey into the waters, the flood. All those stories of Ganymede are Aquarius stories.
Yeah, it's nuts. Look, check this out, right? So this is Ampelos. If anyone doesn't know who Ampelos is, he's an actual god in Greek mythology. He's a lover of one of the various lovers of Dionysus. He's talked about Inonis. He's talked about other iconography. Ovid mentions him, right? So that's that. I just want to show you that he exists. He's a real thing. It's basically like what John is to Jesus Ampelos is a Dionysus. But check this out. It's even crazier. In John's gospel, if you read the Greek, I'll read it for you. Ego emi ampelos eltine kai o pater mu o gergos estin, which means I am the true ampelos, and my father is the vine dresser. That's ampelos. That's
Now,
the word.
Is that like related to the measurement? What's an ampelos again?
now,
Remember,
now
is it
check
an
this
ampere?
out.
Ampelos is this. Ampelos, the lover of Dionysus.
Now check this out. There was one
Isn't
thing I
that
didn't
nuts?
tell y'all. There's one thing I didn't tell you. If you go back to the John picture,
Yeah. Oh, you're yeah. Go ahead. I'm done.
I got one more thing to tell you about this. So there's a couple authors out there that posit that this deals with mushrooms, and it deals also with Sabazios. That John deals with Sabazios, it being that John's father is called Zebedee, and some of the authors, the etymology, they show that it's Zabadi, and it even says it in there a couple times. You're the son of Zebedee because of the sons of thunder. That's what it even says. You're Boanerges, the sons of thunder, dealing with the mushrooms, and
They're
that
almost like they're trying to be like those what are they called? Those two twins.
the Dioscuri.
Oh, juicy.
Dioscurians, yeah.
Corey, absolutely, because he has his twin, right? Which
Right.
is the Centamoros, the Black Killer. He goes on to commit all the genocides.
And they're the
right?
sons of Zeus, the Thunderer.
Yeah, and so their father is Zebedee, which is mentioned several times, even though Mary Salome is the leader, the one that owns the boats, the one that is into the myrrh, the one that's there at the crucifixion. Remember, John is
Even
the
has
one
that-
that's
even
allowed
has-
to go to the court when Jesus is arrested. John is there because he has a relationship with the high priest. When he gets crucified, John is there. And they say, hey, John is the new leader, the son
And
of Sabazios, John.
And Zebedee even has that Z root in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Z.
Yeah.
Zabadi.
Also, frankly, from the iconography, that chalice there is clearly an upturned Amanita muscaria mushroom. That's just what they look like. And you can see from the, when you trace the actual visual history of chalices, goblets, you can see that it is just that shape of a mushroom that eventually cups up and catches the rainwater in there and turns that wine red. It literally looks like a cup of Christ when you go in the forest. The red stuff in an Amanita leaks out into the water and makes what we call these days gnome wine.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And what's ironic, the colors there, if we want to unpack the colors of the painting, the blue is techelet, which is made from the shells, the mollusk shells, but they're getting there at Ascalon because they get the blue that they use for the Jewish, the Hebrew shawls, and for the temple rituals, they're getting from the mollusks, as well as the red is the kermes. Now the kermes, besides getting it from Syrian rue, which is the MOI, the inhibitor, they were getting red from kermes. The kermes is the form of a mold that grows on a tree that's edible and it's sweet. Some people, different books, authors say that that's the mana. Because it would grow on the trees, this red mold called kermes. But they would turn that kermes into a dye, into a red dye. So both those dyes right there are hallucinogenic.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you what as well about the iconography. This is something that came to me that came to me a while ago, that one of the reasons why they're using serpents for the drugs, obviously the serpent venom and the history there. But if it's a portion of the life force in the drugs, if you looked at some mushrooms, for example, the idea of the power in there would be like there's a dragon in those drugs. There's this powerful entity in there raring to get out. And when you have that drug, you absorb that power.
You guys know this book from Kyle Ruck, right?
Oh yeah,
Carl
Ruck, the man.
So he's got pictures in here of certain grains of stock that you can grow. And they gain purple. They become purple over time. I'm actually growing these on my balcony right now. I'm going to show you guys. I just picked
allegedly.
I just picked one for this show. And if you let them ferment, they end up growing this, right? I haven't gotten there yet, but I'll show you something. I want to show you something. Can you make my screen big real quick?
Yeah, I got you. 1 second here.
See the color?
Oh my God.
Hey.
Do you know what they call that?
Cool.
They call that Demeter's robe.
Oh,
It's because Demeter's wearing a purple robe right now.
And
See
if
the
you had
purple?
a microscope, and when you zoom in on that, it looks like a little purple mushroom. It's a mold. It's a purple mushroom that's at the core of it.
Wait, I think I'm going the wrong way.
The burning purple.
Ready? There we go. See the purple?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Looks
That's great,
amazing.
So I'll let this there's a process that involved that you let this. I just picked it. It's ready to go. I have a whole plant of it outside.
You know, we did that one episode. I guess the last episode we showed the Bible verse where the Sabbath, where Jesus they picked the grains off the top of the wheat and they rub them together to eat them. And the other people get mad. They get mad at them for that. They're like, you can't do that on the Sabbath.
See, he's got the different kinds that you can get. These all turn purple. They're different. It's different species of grain. Ergot of wheat, ergot of barley, ergot of pulpsum, ergot of lolium. And they all turn purple if you let them sit for a while.
The burning purple.
And then if you read the hymn to Demeter, Demeter's wearing a purple robe in the story. So it's like reflecting the agricultural layer of the myth.
You know, Neil, while you were gone, we put up one last image that I had found, which is Isis as a snake.
Oh, hell yeah. That's nuts. That seals the deal about Serapis right there.
Absolutely.
He's holding the Corpicaya too.
Hopperkites, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? I found another version of this, and this is also from Alexandria, right?
Is that Corey?
This is Isis. This is called Isis Chenubis.
Yeah.
So it's Isis as the Agatha daimon. It's the feminine version of that Abraxas, right? What we were talking about here, the same Chenubis spirit, but this is now with Isis on the top, right? So you get two iterations of this. It's kind of wild. And we see so many of these snake-legged figures, Anguipede. They're everywhere, right? The Scythian mother is an Anguipede. The Melusine is an Anguipede. We talked about the Hindu Manasa. She's an Anguipede. You know,
Lamashtu, Otargaris.
Yeah, all over the place, these snake-legged people, right? And as Ryan was talking about, that controlling of your lower self, right? So we're going back now to the name of the dragon. That here is the Orphic name of the dragon. When I was looking at that phylactery, what I wanted to do was explore other similar spells within the PGM. So I went and I selected a couple of different ones. So first one we're going to look at is one of the most famous spells in the PGM. It comes to us from PGM 596 and is known as the Headless Rite, which many, many magicians have done. And I wanted to read you guys a short quote from the Headless Rite so that we can just see how intense this stuff gets. It says, "I am the headless daimon with my sight and my feet. I am the mighty one who possesses the immortal fire. I am the truth who hates the fact that unjust deeds are done in the world. I am the one who makes the lightning flash and the thunder roll. I am the one whose sweat is heavy rain, which falls upon the earth that it might be inseminated." Just like we see with Shiva in the Soma.
Favor of Ion.
Right? It's that moon lunar semen stuff again, the rain. I am the one whose mouth burns completely. I am the one who begets and destroys. I am the favor of the Ion.
Oh my God, I got something for you after this.
My name, this is the most wild part though, is my name is a heart encircled by a serpent. Where do we know that from? Clement of Alexandria in his what is that text called? Protrepticus, right? And he specifically says that that's what identifies the followers of Sabazios, a heart encircled by a serpent. What did you want to add there, Gnostic? Oh, here we go.
Oh, okay. So I have a couple of things. Number one, I had this sitting for a little while because I wanted to show the donkey stuff. You got all this image of cultic activity. They're doing something with a coffin, carrying a donkey. There it's carrying something. I don't know what that is. And then this is old Dionysius. That's Dionysus on the left. and I believe that is Demeter on the right, about to get on a donkey. And there's Silenus, the drunken satyr. This is a coin from like 600 BC. This is so far back. So if everyone wants to say Zechariah is where we get the idea of a guy riding on a donkey, nope. This is before that. Zechariah is after this. All right. But as far as Ion goes,
can I say something there really quickly?
Yes, please.
I wanted to talk about the link symbolically between the dragon and the donkey.
Yeah.
The dragon, as we've said so far, being this primal energy, and then when it gets into you, it kind of becomes this Luciferian energy that wants things and urges. Well, the donkey's that same signifier. That's why it fits so well with Set and Seth and all these kind of guys. It's the urges. And I think what it actually is the urges harnessed to do the work.
Absolutely, because there's a really important image going on. When you read about the myths of Dionysus and the donkey takes him home. The donkey ensures that his drunk ass doesn't fall into a bloody ditch. And this is very true. Anyone who's been around donkeys or horses, you can train them. Yeah, you can, and this is a talked about thing throughout history where people used to get drunk, go onto their horse or their donkey and get pulled home. Because the donkey is a beast of burden. It carries the statue. It carries you home. It does the work, and even in death, it becomes the drum. It never
carries water too. It's a water bringer, which is a life bringer. Yeah,
and it's lunar. This is all relating to the subconscious as much as anything, the training of these systems.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Before Apuleius can unveil Isis and meet the great mother and be saved, he has to become the donkey and go through the trials of fortune.
He has to carry the burden.
He has to carry the burden.
Right, that's a really good point.
He has to be whipped, right?
Can I show you the Ion phrase or the source from? Now, if you watch my channel, you'll know this. I talk about it from time to time, but I want people, and anyone watching this might not have heard this yet. This might be shocking for some people. That Epiphanius, one of our famous saints of the Orthodox Church and Catholic Church, he is the successor of Eusebius. That means he is the encyclopedist of the entire Roman Empire. That means he has access to every single book in every single library at his fingertips. He is the only person in the ancient world who had the equivalent of the internet. This guy. So if anyone has great sources, it's this guy. All right. He writes volumes and volumes and volumes. He writes so many books that I don't even think one scholar has ever read all of his works yet. I don't think I've ever been done yet. That's how much this guy's written. Now, in one of his books, Panarion 51, he randomly talks about the birth of Jesus. But what he says is shocking. He says, "For indeed the Savior is born." I'm gonna skip through a little bit. This is a lot. He talks about the birth of he says, "The idolaters on the 8th day before the calends of January, which the Romans call Saturnalia, the Egyptians called Cronia, and the Alexandrians called Caecalia." And then he says, this is the same day as Christ's birth, whatever. And then this is where it gets crazy. For even the leaders of the idolatry religion, forced to confess a part of the truth, and the deceivers deceive these by those convinced by them, idolaters, in many places conduct a great festival on the very night of the Epiphany, so that those hoping in the deception would not seek the truth. For first in Alexandria, this is where we've just been studying this whole entire podcast, in the so-called Corium, that's the mother of Dionysus, or the mother of Zagreus, the Cori, right? There is a great temple, that is, the precinct of Cori, Persephone, for staying awake the entire night with certain songs and flutes, singing to the idol and spending the whole night after the crowing of the roosters. There's a rooster again. They descend with torches into a certain underground shrine and bring out a certain wooden statue sitting on a litter, naked, having a golden seal of a cross on the forehead and 2 other seals on each of his hands and 2 knees. Together, the 5 seals made of gold, they carry the statue around the middle of the temple 7 times with flutes and drums and hymns, and after celebrating, they again bring it down into the underground place. Being asked what this mystery is, they reply and say that at this hour today, the Cori, that is virgin, by the way, he uses the word virgin. It's in here. Parthenos, see, that is virgin. This day, Cori, that is virgin. He says that. All right, we'll go back to the virgin gave birth to Ion, not Jesus, to Ion. What? And then it says this also happens in Petra, the metropolis of Arabia. That's where those great stone temples are.
Indiana Jones. Yeah.
Indiana Jones was filmed there, which is Edom in the scriptures. In the idol temple there, they praise the virgin in Arabic dialect, calling her Kabu, like Kabbalah or Kukubeli, right? Or that is Cori the virgin. And the one born from her, Dusaris, that is the only begotten of the Lord. This also takes place in Elusa, the city, and in Petra and in Alexandria.
Again, we're seeing that Hippocrates, and we're seeing Plutos. And remember, have you read?
That's the child born. Yeah,
exactly. Have you read Carl Kareni's book on Persephone?
Yeah, I have all of his books here. Every single one. Carl Kareni is my favorite. He's my favorite.
He claims that it's not that the mystery that's revealed at Eleusis is that Demeter is the adoptive mother of Plutus, and that really Plutos is the child of the sky and the earth, Persephone and Hades, right?
So it's basically Zagreus. It's the Zagreus of a different,
It's another. It's Dionysus is the dying rising in God, so it's the
That's what he is.
Dionysus. It's Dionysus to come, right?
If I could say one thing to you, when you're talking about Petra and Kaaba, the original orientation, and so people could type this in. Al-Fayed, the Muslim scholar, he has multiple videos out about this, and he talked about the original orientation of the original mosques in Islam were oriented towards the Kaaba in Petra. So the original Muslims were praying not towards Mecca, but towards Petra.
Right.
And what are they praying to? The Kaaba. Al-Fayad, type in the channel.
God, if you look on Petra, guess what God is standing there with the fruits in the, what is it called? The cork. What is it called?
Cornucopia.
Cornucopia. That's
it's the horn of plenty.
That's Thusaris standing there on the middle of the temple. And that's Dionysus.
Yeah.
And when you guys talk about roosters, on the Sabazios hand, one of the traditional symbols is a rooster as well. The rooster and the snake going together.
For me, that's a phallic symbol, a bit of a mushroom symbol there. You find that in the cockatrice with dragons as well. But it's also a symbol of time. It's the beginning of time. It's the cock crowing at the beginning.
So the big thing I wanted to get into with you guys here. Well, okay, we'll show this thing.
I just want people to see. There he is, right there. See, he's got the Thyrsus staff. He's got that's him. That's Dionysus.
Can you zoom in?
That's as far as it's only letting me go that far.
And that's Petra right there.
This is Petra.
Yeah, and so that's a fake facade because you go to that door and nothing happens.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah, and so this is carved in a canyon that's oriented. That, like I said, there's people all the way in Afghanistan, Muslims there, were praying towards this right there.
Isn't that nuts? This is
in
the original Islam.
That's an Islamic holy spot right there, where Muhammad, and it deals with donkeys. Muhammad and donkeys.
It's actually a pagan site that's Dionysian.
Yeah.
Well, Muhammad is always freaking out about alcohol. I'm almost certain that he is doing these Dionysian rites, and that's why he's so anti-alcohol. But I wanted to get back into the PGM and to look at some of these more rituals, okay? So I wanted to look at this one, which is about invoking Apollo and Helios as Phobos, because there's a really interesting thing in terms of dealing with the Sabazian hands that we're going to see. So again, it's about this thing about putting on this magical, you wrap yourself like a corpse, you're wrapped like a mummy, you're closing your eyes, you're directed towards the sun, you're wrapped in linen in order to protect yourself, you're dying and rising. And, this is to Typhon, this isn't to Apollo, this one. But what we do get here with Typhon is this is called the 100-word or the 100-letter name of Typhon. And this is a really important thing that would be inscribed on all these phylacteries. And I have it here. where it's transliterated, and this would be what would be chanted and inscribed in Greek on these lead tablets. And this one is one I also wanted to look at here in the PGM2. This is the one that's to Apollo. So if we go and
Are you not going to read one for us, Snappy? I've got to hear you say some of those words.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get to the invocation.
Ambrosian mouth on the bottom. Look at that.
Okay, so it says, Laurel, Apollo's holy plant of presage, whose leaves the scepter-bearing Lord once tasted and set forth songs himself.
Yayos.
Renowned
There it is. That's the
Zion.
chant.
Yep. Who lives
By the
in
way,
Palestine.
it's spelled in Greek. Iota, eta, with an a, yay, like Jesus, yay.
Yep.
Spelled with the IH, just like Jesus.
Right, and this is to Apollo, right?
Yeah.
Give heed to holy song and quickly come to earth from heaven and converse with me. Stand near and from my ambrosian lips inspire my songs. Come, Lord of song, yourself renowned ruler of song. Hear, blessed one, heavy in wrath and stern. Now, Titan, hear our voice, unfailing one. Do not ignore. Stand here, speak presage to a suppliant from your ambrosian mouth. Quickly, all pure Apollo. Here's the greeting. Hail, fire's dispenser, world's far-seeing king. O Helios, with noble steeds, the eye of Zeus, which
Damn.
guards the earth, all-seeing one, who travel lofty paths, O gleam divine, who move through the heaven bright, unattainable, born long ago, unshaken, with a headband of gold, wearing a disc, mighty with fire. Headband of gold wearing a disc, that's a Uraeus, with gleaming breastplate, winged one, untiring, with golden reins coursing a golden path, and you who watch, encircle, hear all men. For you, day's flames that bring the light give birth to dawn. And as you pass the midmost pole, behind you, rosy-ankled sunrise goes, back to her home in grief. In front, sunset meets you and leads your team of fire-fed steeds down into ocean. Night darts down in flight from heaven, wherever she hears the crack of whips that strikes with force around the horse's flanks. A-E-I-E-O-E-U.
That's the
Oh,
chants right there. That's all the
Oh,
scepter-
MacDonald at a farm.
Right? Where do you think that's coming from? It's all about this magical chanting, about expressing the tones.
Well, if you think about it though, it's all of it's Ya, Ye with the epsilon, and then Ye with an eta, and then Ye with an iota, Yo with an omicron, U with an upsilon, and Yo with an omega.
Yeah.
So it's just it's all of the
Seven.
sacred chants that Hezekiah tells us about.
Well,
Yeah.
when you read a lot of the PGM,
Vowels.
you see, they're intoning to get the endocrine system going, as I was kind of intimating at the beginning, and you hear they have breathing techniques. They're clearly doing drugs. There's a whole system between the lines here.
Yeah,
I think at one
reason why
point they're saying like breathe in twice as deeply as you're able to. So they're going and then hitting like serpents, then going yow, and right now I'm already off my head.
Yeah, I think
You know?
I think they're adding in a rough breathing iota to the front. So they're going ya, ye, yeah, yeah, yo, you, yo. And that's the reason why I think that is because if you look at those E's, the way they translated it, they put a line over it, which signifies long vowel. So that's why there's two different O's. One of them is an omicron. The long vowel is at the end. That's an omega. Short vowel is omicron. Long vowel is omega. It's like you're tuning your vowels long. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you're tuning it to the cavities in your body. Like when you do it, I mean, Snappy will know this particularly, but you when you make certain notes, certain vowels, you will hit different parts of your body. And this is what they do it to this day. Mantra does it.
You're supposed to hit all the 7 points as you talked about in your system. Each of those vowels will correspond to one of the 7 points. And if you do it correctly, you will hit all of those hot points and open up those chakra fields.
By the way, ready for this?
Causing that snake to ascend your spine.
There was a magus. There was a magus in It's in one of these mystery. It's in one of these inscriptions for the Mithraic mysteries, where it talks about a magus traveling to a chasm somewhere in Babylon, all the way in the east, where he travels super far, and he goes to this chasm in the world where there's an opening to where they think Hades is the opening to, and the only way to open it is to open a portal, and this magus had to chant sacred chants at the top of his lungs as loud as he can until he started sweating blood, and this is probably something like this.
Absolutely.
And it's open. They're opening up portals to Hades.
So wild. Let's continue here. So it says, "O scepter-bearing leader of the muses, giver of life, come now to me, come quickly, to earth, Eos, hair wreathed with ivy, and Phobos, with ambrosian mouth, give voice to song." This is where it gets wild. "Hail fire's guard." Okay, so this is a barbarous word, but it's also attached to this epithet of Hecate. Arachara ethescere. We see this a couple different times in the PGM related to Hecate, but here it's related to Apollo. Interesting. Inhale Morai 3, Clotho, Atropos, Lacus, 2 I call you, who are great in heaven, air-like, supreme ruler, you whom all nature serves, who dwell throughout the whole inhabited world.
Wait. You got to go back for a second. Look what it says. He calls him Yeos, which is it's got the stem where Jesus is named Jesus, Yeos. But then it says hair wreathed with ivy. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Dionysus.
Apollo wears laurel. Dionysus
know.
wears ivy. This is a combination of Dionysus and Apollo rolled into one.
And also Helios, because he was called Titan earlier and called Helios.
Yeah, Apollo gets merged with Helios.
We're getting to that primordial duality of this figure that Apollo, Dionysus combined, right?
Yep.
So I call you who are great in heaven, air-like, supreme ruler, you whom all nature serves, who dwell throughout the whole inhabited world, you whose bodyguard is the 16 giants. There's all this stuff about giants in the PGM, you know. You are seated upon the lotus and who light up the whole inhabited world. You who have designated the various living things upon the earth. You who have the sacred bird upon your robe in eastern parts of the Red Sea. I just wanted to point out that sitting upon the lotus, this is the imagery of Brahma, the creator god. He sits upon the lotus flower. Even as you upon the northern parts.
So does Harpocrates too.
Right? The figure of an infant child seated upon a lotus. Now we get Harpocrates, the next Zeus to come, right?
You know what's crazy? When they discovered these papyri throughout the years, where are the Bible scholars at? Going like, maybe we should adjust some of our preconceptions about Christianity after we find new evidence. This stuff has been being discovered, and people just go, eh.
Right.
Anyways, go ahead.
It's wild. O rising one, O you of many names, more barbarous. On the southern parts, you have the shape of the sacred falcon, through which you send fiery heat into the air. You become Lur Exnax. This is the Lorethian Hydra, okay? Now we're getting the snake stuff. In the parts toward the west, you have the shape of a crocodile with the tail of a snake. Khnum, again, right? That god with the head of a crocodile and the snake tail, from which you send out rains and snows, the floods, right? In parts towards the east, you have the form of a winged dragon. In the east, a winged dragon, right? That's that Venus energy. A diadem fashioned of air. A diadem. Is that the Uraeus? Are we now, with which you quell all discords beneath the heavens and on earth. For you have manifested yourself as God in truth. Hear me, O greatest God, Combs, who lights up the day, who rise as an infant, who traverse the pole. You unite yourself, right? You unite yourself and endow yourself with power, giver of increase and illuminator. You are both Apollo and Dionysus, because Dionysus is the giver of increase, and Apollo is the illuminator of many things, right?
Yep.
Of most powerful god combs. And then we get through all of this.
Magical chanting.
But
There's
this is
Australia.
the most important part.
You see the lengthened vowels all throughout there too.
The most important part, though, the most great and mighty God, I am He, the secret name, who you have to know, who have presented myself to you and have given me as a gift the knowledge of your most great name, of which the number is 999,000, right? This is what that hand of Sabazios is talking about. 999,000. The right hand is the max. The left hand is the Trinity. Okay?
It's 666 upside down too. If you look at the
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I was saying
It
before as well. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could be both. I summon
Yeah, it
you
could be both.
Apollo, Claros, Castilian one, Ea, Pythian, Owe, Apollo of the Muses, E-U-U-E-I. Right? And now we get the preparation of the right. Back to the scarab beetle. Remember at the beginning when I was talking about and showing you all that stuff with with Ketfree? On the first day, collect nails of a sheep. On the second, the nails of a goat. On the third, the hair and knuckle bones of a wolf. All sacred animals. The sheep are also used in anti-venom, right? The goat we know is for collecting all of the various drugs. And the wolves, that corresponds to other priestesses. Use these as burnt offerings for the next 3 days. On the seventh day, in case he does not yet come, make a lamp wick out of a piece of cloth taken from one who has died violently, and light a lamp from pure oil and recite the prescribed formulas, beseeching and exhorting the god to come with goodwill. Yet your place be cleansed of all pollution, and having purified it, begin in purity the supplication to the god, for it is very great and irresistible. Take mud and purify the doorposts of your bedchamber. Doesn't this sound like some biblical rites?
Yeah.
In which you are observing ritual purity, and having thus smeared on the mud, write the following inscription with bronze stylus on the right hand of the doorpost. We get another one of these mystical names of the dragon. What is to be written? Similarly, on the left hand post, we get another one.
Can I just
Two
point out
different
you got
dragons,
Abrasax there, who is Abraxas,
yeah.
right?
who is Aeon essentially.
Right.
Yep.
And again, going back to that Chanubis, the same energy again. On the upper part of the door, right, with Michael, we get an energy. And inscribed the scarab, again, going back to Chanubis as it stands here. Having anointed it with the blood of a goat outside your bedchamber, let the throne be purified, and upon it a linen cloth, and beneath it a footstool. Inscribe on the throne on the other side. More Barbara, Lord of the Muses, be gracious to me, your supplement, and benevolent and merciful, appear to me with pure countenance. And we get the headless guy again with the Sabaoth and the sacred names inscribed inside. This figure is to be inscribed on a piece of clothing belonging to one who has died violently, right? After you learned all you want, you will release him, doing honor to him in a worthy manner. Sprinkle dove's blood round about. Make a burnt offering of myrrh and say, Lord. And here we get it. Chormu, when I was looking in Dr. Skinner's book, again, Chernubis. We're getting this agothic daimon, that Abraxas spirit again. Go off, Lord, to your seats, to your palace, leaving me the strength and the right of audience with you. So that's the full spell, summoning Apollo. But it's Apollo, and here we have one of the magical words. So within here, they gave us a really special word. They give us one of these 999. I didn't say it, but it was where they said here, right? And this name written out into the
Frey Anoi Forco Fu Rupsis Orokoi.
Orokoi. And it's this adds up to exactly 999,000, right? And this is supposed to be the sacred name that is implied, or at least one of them. There's another one that we found, but I didn't put it in this thing. And again, it deals with this image of the Sabazian hand, because what I found was there's this whole system that they called the Computus Digitorum, where they would use to be able to tell the equinoxes. There's this one medieval text where they were able to figure out when Easter is coming based upon the hand and looking at the stars. And a monk goes through it. And when I lined it up and I added up these numbers to see what this hand sign would mean, it
Damn.
means 999,000.
Wow.
999,000 according to that medieval text.
So
And then
do we
on the
think
other
that
hand-
means, what does that mean? Does that mean something like everything? Are they saying the many things? What do you feel
The
like it
many.
is?
So
Well,
I
if
feel-
yeah.
so
there's a
we-
passage in Proclus. Proclus says that number 9 is divine because every
Mhm.
single number has 0.9 within it. So 1.99999. That's everything inside of it.
I think it's
Yeah.
representative of the infinity. We were talking about this a bit earlier, but we were talking about time as those 2 points. When you see Sabazios sitting on the hand, in this version, you don't see him sitting in the middle of the hand, but in Dion's presentation, we saw that, and he's bearing 2 signs. Well, the other one is 3 and 999,000. So you go from the smallest mode of creation in time to the largest mode of creation in time. Right?
I like it.
And again, we're getting that Ouroboros, the circle, the cycle, the snake that consumes its tail.
Another possibility I went into, apart from the 666, and again 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. It's just these processional numbers, but possibly as well it's a 3-4-5 triangle. So you got 3 digits up, 4 fingers, and 5 altogether. So
It's
that's something I ran
all
into.
of these things. It's within
I'd
these
say that's less
mysteries.
likely than what you've proven there. Although I would stand by the 666 still.
The 666, I think, is very likely. I think, within these things, there's always multiple meanings. But it's clear that the hand of Sabazios is used for this calendrical system based upon the zodiac on the hand and all of the markings, you know? But I wanted to go into...
time. They're all markings of time. That cock is the beginning of time. The serpent is all of time. If there's lion on there, it's the momentary time. I noticed one of them has a double-headed eagle on there as well, which is like the end of time, looking backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
Right. And in the Indian systems, they count 108 on the hand for doing, if you don't have your beads, your japmala or your rudraksha, you would just do it on your hand. And that's how most people would have done it in the ancient world, to be able to keep track and do their maths, right?
Well, we certainly know they were doing that stuff in Babylon and Sumeria. That's where we get the whole system from.
Absolutely.
Of time.
This is from PGM as well. And it's also to Helios. Wrap a naked boy in a linen, head to toe, clap your hands. After ringing a noise, place the boy opposite the sun. Standing behind him, say the formula. Barbaroyeth, I am Peskut Yahoo Adonai Eloi Sabaoth. Come into this little one today, for I am Barbaroyeth. What the hell? This is some deep magic right here, dude.
Whoa, that is insane.
And there's your naked kid in the garden right there, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. But to show you guys some more of these crazy spells, I found this one. Charm for acquiring business and for calling in customers. To a workshop or house, or wherever you put it. By having it, you will become rich. You will be successful. For Hermes made this for the wandering Isis. The charm is marvelous and is called the litter beggar. Take beeswax that has not been heated, which is known as bee glue, and fashion a man. We're getting our voodoo guy. This makes me think of the talk Ryan and I recently had. Having his right hand in the possession of begging, and having in his left a bag and a staff. A bag and a staff. That is Dionysian imagery, the fool. Let there be around the staff a coiled snake, and let him be dressed in a girdle. We're getting Hercules imagery
Wow.
now. We're getting Achilles imagery now. And standing on a sphere. Does this not also scream Rebus? That has a coiled
Yeah.
snake. Like Isis, stand it up and erected in a single block of hollowed out juniper, and have an asp, or snake, covering the top as a capital. Covering the
I'm
top
getting
as a capital.
spine. Yeah, I'm getting
Right?
spine imagery again. Hollowed out
Exactly.
juniper. Yeah.
Fashion him during the new moon and consecrated in a celebrating mood, and read aloud the spell over his members. After you have divided him into 3 sections, ripping him apart like Dionysus, like Phanes, right? Like Zagreus, repeating the spell 4 times for each member. For each member, write on strips of papyrus made from a priestly scroll with ink of cinnabar, which Dion
Sure.
was talking about, juice of wormwood, and myrrh. When you have set it up high on the place you have chosen, sacrifice it to a wild ass. You feed it to a wild donkey with a
Damn.
white forehead, and offer it whole, and roast the inward parts over the wood of willow, and thus eat it. So then you eat the donkey. You feed it to a donkey, then you kill and eat the donkey. Okay. Now, this is what is to be written on each strip of papyri, the spell on the bag. Okay, we get our barbarous words. Upon the head, on the neck, on the right shoulder. Okay, where do we get to the... Here it is. On the snake, the name, Agoth Daimon. Which
Oh
my
God.
has
You just tied it all
Epaphroditus.
together.
Yep. As if Epaphroditus says the following, and here we get it again. That name for God, that is exactly 999 in the isopsophy, right?
Whoa.
But as on the paper which I found, the spell changed was thus: Harpon.
Wait, do you know what that
Nufi.
means? You know what that means? Isopsophy?
Isopsophy, yeah. That's
That's
what
gematria.
I've been
That's
talking about.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Holy
And the
shit.
gematria
It's
of
Well,
this
six upside
phrase
down.
is
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think
999.
most of these words are because of the gematria,
And they're
particularly the
divisible.
dragon's tongue that Snappy's been on about. And I proved that Eliphas Leve was still using it in that manner in the present day.
But
Yeah.
2/3 of 999 is 666. They're divisible of each other.
Yeah, so
Absolutely. Again with the dual hand signs.
What the hell? This is nuts. Oh my
And
God.
I swear down, it's all this processional stuff because that's literally the building blocks of the universe.
Yeah.
It's almost always
The
calendrical.
golden ratio, you know what I mean?
And
Yeah, all
look,
that stuff.
Yeah.
Harpon Nufi. We get Harpocrates again.
There it is. Yeah.
Spell, this is the spell for the right. Now here's the spell. I receive you as the
What does
cowherd.
Kanufi mean?
As the cowherd who has his camp towards the south. I receive you for the widow and the orphan. Therefore, give me favor, work for my business, bring to me silver, gold, clothing, much wealth for the good of it. Isn't that so wild?
That's great. And it did pull quite a few things together there then.
Right? So, and then I wanted to show you guys.
Oh my God. That means so Harpo Carid means Horus the child. Harpo Canufi means Horus the scarab.
And again, we're getting back to Chanuvis, right? The same god that's Agothodaimon.
It even says Canufi. Yeah, that's why it means that. That's why it means that. So that's a different.
wild.
That's a different Horus. That's Horus the Lightbringer.
Horus the Lightbringer, right? We get even 2 versions of Horus. There's an underworld and a solar Horus.
Yeah, Horus, because they call it the older Egyptian mysteries before the Greeks were there. It was Horus the Elder and Horus the Child. So I guess in this sense, it's Harpocrates and Harpocanupus. But it's still 2 Horuses.
Yep. So
It's the same character in different functions, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
you know, he's doing the underworld shamanic thing. That's what he's doing. He's almost charging the energy up to become that Dionysian rising back energy, but he's not there yet. He's the scarab moving the ball across the earth. He's
Yep.
doing the work. He's the ass.
He's the
He's the He's the dragon rider. Taming the dragon is the dude getting off his ass.
Oh my
Is that
God. This
amazing or
is so
what?
amazing.
And now, to tie it back to the first PTM thing I showed you, where they literally said the heart, the symbol is the heart encircled by a serpent. What does Clement tell us? The God through the bosom is the symbol of the Sabazian myth. What is the word for bosom there, Neil?
Dragon.
In the Greek.
It's,
For bosom. Kolpos.
Oh, Kolpos, yeah.
Look at this. What does
Lap.
it say here for Kolpos?
Lap, vagina.
Right? Vagina. Go to the second one.
By the way, guess who else
Vagina.
uses the exact same phrase and for Jesus being born in the bosom of the Father? He uses the word kolpos. It's John's gospel.
Yeah, it would be John.
I'll find that for you.
Right.
But keep
so
going,
the
keep going.
snake in the vagina is the sign of the initiate. What is this about? It's about being possessed and giving birth to the new lineage of God men, right? Producing a child with the snake, just like Alexander,
I found it.
Heracles,
Check this out. I found it. The word, it's the same exact word. It's the same exact word, dude. Look.
Where is it?
Theon Udeus Eoraka to right here. Oh, ace tone kolpon. It's in the accusative. Kolpon. So it's still kolpus, but it's in the accusative. That's why it's the same word. In the bosom of the Father. Look at down here. The king. We'll just do the king. Doesn't matter what version we use. Which is no man has seen God only through the begotten Son, which is the bosom of the Father. So that Jesus is in the bosom, is in the lap of Theos.
Yeah.
The Patros. You know what I mean?
So, Snappy, I think you were bringing it together then. So you were saying that it's, you pretty much saying what I was saying, I think, that it's a line of energy again, whether it be a bloodline or the will to draw down the stars and then produce this God Ubermensch kind of person at the end of it. Or would that be right? Yeah. Like focusing the lightning, essentially.
Absolutely. Well, it all goes back to these Babylon mysteries, right? The same stuff that Crowley is after. What was Crowley trying to do when he was drawing down the moon and talking about Harpocrates? He's trying to give birth to the new Ion. What is Jesus doing? He was doing the same thing. What was Heracles doing? What was Medea doing? They're all destroying the previous lineage and creating a new lineage that defines the age. Ending one age and creating a new age. It's just so.
And as we said at the beginning, that dragon being a symbol of time, the serpent being a symbol of time in manifestation, giving it to the dragon or surrounding it with the cartouche, which is the Ouroboros serpent, brings it into manifestation and allows you to focus it into something.
Yep. Again,
the spell is the focusing of this energy into something.
If you look on B where it says E held number 144, I don't know what that reference is, but if you look on the right, it says Delphi. There's an inscription there, and I don't know where this inscription, if we can find it, but look, it has that word kolpon in the dative again. So there's
Womb
some
of
sort of
time. Do you see that?
Yeah,
too?
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We got to go find that shit, dude. That's you know what it says? It says there's an inscription at Delphi where it has that written there. So we don't even know what that means. That could be for Dionysus, if all we know.
And you're doing
it occurs to me as well
thing on the inscriptions of Delphi, aren't you, Dion?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to write this down and get this down there. I'm gonna have to find this. I'm gonna have to look it up online, find it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that video whenever it drops. But yeah,
It says Despoinus. Hold on, let me just read that real quick. Go back real quick. Despoinus hupo kolpon udon. I wonder what that means. I'm gonna look it up. Go ahead, keep going.
I was just about to remark that we're in that area of the genitals again. If the serpent's in the breast or in the kolpos, we're in that area of the genitals again. So it does seem very.
Go ahead. I just Despoinus means lady or mistress.
Right. That's
it literally means lady of the bosom.
Yeah, it's another name for Persephone and Demeter, right? Despoina.
Yeah.
You see this in the linear B as well. It's one of the oldest names for the Great Mother. But go ahead, Ryan.
I was just linking these things together again and associating it with sex once again. that we're in. I would personally, if it was to reinforce my argument, say we're in the area of the sacrum again. But that aside, it's still linked to sex again. When we could say it's that Medea, cup of her, fornication, processing drugs idea, but equally we could just say that look, most humans are powered, especially in your earlier life, by that area.
Yeah.
Many a boy's followed his willy into trouble, because it's got a mind of its own.
That's half of the stories about Zeus, right? And we know that a lot of these stories are allegories about trying to discover that middle way. You have to learn to control those urges.
Get on that donkey, yeah.
Right? So I wanted to show you guys this. This is from Revelation 13:11. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. Spoke like a dragon, a beast. What god has the horns of a lamb? Dionysus again. Coming out of the earth, right? Again, we're dealing with that Zeus of the earth. And he speaks like a dragon.
This to me looks like it's pointing at Cetus, Ketus in the sky, which Aries is next to. Ketus is right at the end of the zodiac and about where Pisces is, and actually feeds into that two-horned beast of Aries. And I'll note as well, if we're talking about mushrooms, that Ketus is the whale that swallows, what's his name? I want to say Geppetto, but what's his name? He gets swallowed by the whale. Jonah gets swallowed by the whale. And then he basically gets swallowed because God asked him to do something. He's like, nah, it sounds dangerous to me, God. And then he eventually, because of that, gets swallowed by this whale. Well, when he gets spat back out and goes and does what he's supposed to do, which is go and preach to this city of sinners, when he comes out, he goes and sits on the side under a Kukion. It's spelled Kukion. I'm like, what? Kukion? And it says, although it sheltered him that night, by the morning it had rotted and turned into worms. And I'm like, he's sat under a mushroom, and called Kukion, and it's rotted overnight, turned to worms, and it smelled as well.
There's also lots going on here about the fields of Aries. Ammon talks about this all the time. Where do we find the golden fleece? It's on the fields of Aries. You have to cross Aries to get to that golden fleece. Who can cross Aries, right?
Wow.
Thing he does. What's his name? That defeats Medusa.
Perseus.
Perseus. Yeah, Perseus. Perseus is up there. He's the one that's crossing it.
Exactly. He goes through and he
does
destroys the dragon, dethrones her, vilifies her, steals her magic, steals
Theseus.
the language, right? The Phrygian language.
You also have Theseus down in Crete does the same sort of journey.
Right.
Yeah. Well, most of the time you can just look up and find it up there, and that, judging by the time it's occurring, you can pretty much understand what they're talking about. My point in relating back to Ketus, which is the sea monster, is that it's this shamanic thing again. It's this flood myth again that's a washing away of your problems inside, essentially. That shamanic journey.
One of the other things I was reading recently, my friend Gandhi sent me this text that was talking about, like, it was a commentary on Odysseus, on the Odyssey. And they're talking about when Odysseus goes to confront Circe, right? And he has a holy moly, so her magic doesn't affect him. But he decides to stay, right? He wants to stay in the world and try to return home to get back to his wife. And in this commentary, Circe rebukes Odysseus and basically laughs at him, is like, I could have given you Ionic. Well, he wants to try and free the people who have been turned into animals, not the pigs, but the people who are wolves and dogs and whatnot. And he asks, can I speak to them? And she's like, well, you would have to learn how to speak to them. And eventually she gives him this magic in order to speak to one of them. But the guy rebukes and says, there's no way I'm going home. This is where I want to be. We've achieved the goal. And Circe basically laughs at Odysseus and says, You know, you're bound in the cycle. You're going around. You're going to go find your wife, and it's not going to be what you expect, and she'll be much older. You could have stayed with me and lived forever and had this incredible power in this dream. It's totally wild.
Cool.
But I wanted to show you guys this from the Dionysiaca of Nonus, just to get more onto this dragon imagery with Dionysus. Now he leaned over the bed with a horned head on human limbs, lowing with the voice of a bull, the very likeness of bull-horned Dionysus. Again, he put on a shaggy lion's form, or he was a panther, as one who begets a bold son, driver of panthers and charioteer of lions. Again, as a young bridegroom, he bound his hair with coiling snakes and vine leaves intertwined, and twisted purple ivy about his locks. He has dreadlocks. The plaited ornament of Bacchus. The plaited hair is an ornament of Bacchus, writhing with snakes and ivy. A writhing serpent crawled over the trembling bride and licked her rosy neck with gentle lips. Then slipping into her bosom, girdled the circuit of her form breasts, hissing a wedding tune, and sprinkled her with honey of the swarming bees instead of the viper's deadly poison. Zeus made long wooing and shouted, Eoi. They're not talking about Zeus. They're talking about Dionysus. They're just giving him that title of Zeus.
Right. That's what they
As
do.
if the
He's the new king of Olympus.
Right? As if the winepress were near, as he begat his son who would love the cry. He pressed the love-mad mouth to mouth and beaded up delicious nectar, an intoxicating bedfellow for Semele, that she might bring forth a son to hold the scepter of nectareal vintage, as a presage of things to come. He lifted the care for getting grapes, resting his laden arm on the fire-bringing fennel. Or again, he lifted a thyrsus entwined about with purple ivy, wearing a deerskin on his back. The lovesick wearer shook the dappled fawnskin with his left arm. So it's the snake going around her breast, and that it causes her to willingly engage in the lovemaking with Zeus. And as we know with the next part of the story, when Semele tries to look upon him, she's burned alive. And that's when Zeus has to cut open his thigh and place the baby inside his thigh, because it was prematurely born, and he still needs to cook. And then he has to take off and hide in the mountains with the Coryabants, who cause the thunder to rain so that no one can hear the cries of Dionysus, so he doesn't get ripped apart like Iacchus Zagreus was before. So
Yeah,
wild stuff.
So much mushroom symbolism there as well.
Amazing.
Right?
In,
I also want to
sorry, go on,
ahead.
Steppy.
No,
It's all right.
You talk about mushrooms. 'Cause I'm gonna jump
I was
in.
just saying, it's the we got a Canadian and an Englishman. We're all too polite for each other. So yeah, that, I mean, they say thigh with Zeus, but it clearly is a polite way of saying penis. And you know, you're getting this dying and resurrecting guy that comes from ashes, and then you know we got this kind of phoenix symbology going on here, but also the same penis shaped, and it clearly to me is pointing at mushrooms again. And if you look at Dionysus ivy hair, you know, the ivy in his hair, when you look at most of them, that ivy is drawn in the shape of a mushroom. It's the silhouette of a mushroom. So I'm just noticing this mushroom symbology over and over again.
So the next places where I kept seeing the snake stuff coming in was with the Furies. The Furies repeatedly in several different places attack people and throw snakes at them and cause them to go crazy. So the first one I saw was in Ovid's Metamorphoses. So look at this from 4.481. There she, Tisiphone, one of the Furies, stands with her arms extended and alive with twisting vipers. She shakes her hair, the moving serpents hiss. They cling upon her shoulders and they glide around her temples, dart their fans and vomit corruption. Plucking from the midst two snakes, she hurls them with pestilential hand upon her victims, Athamas and Ino, whom, although the vipers strike upon their breasts, No injury attacks their mortal parts. Only their minds are stricken with wild rage, inciting to mad violence and crime, and with a monstrous composite of foam, foaming at the mouth, once gathered from the mouth of Cerberus, which is a drug Ammon has talked about several times. And we know Cerberus is the avatar of Hecate, according to Ruck. The venom of Echidna, purposeless aberrances, crimes, tears, hatred.
And he stands next to Serapis, by the way.
Right? Lust of homicide, and the dark vaporings of foolish brains, a liquid poison mixed and mingled with fresh blood in hollow brass, and boiled and stirred up with a slip of hemlock. She took of it, and as they trembled, threw that mad mixed poison on them, and it scorched their inmost vitals. And she waved her torch repeatedly within a circle's rim, the torch in a circle, right? Which will make that line like a snake, right? And added flame to flame. Then, confident of having executed her commands, the fury hastened to the void expanse where Pluto reigns, and swiftly put aside the serpents that were wreathed around her robe.
There it is.
Dean has talked about the serpents wreathed around the robe, too. We've even found physical anthropological evidence for that. Totally wild.
That goes all the way back to the Minoans that have that image.
Absolutely. Right? And then we have a very similar image, this time dealing with the Fury Alecto from the Aeneid, sliding between her clothing and her polished breast. It winds itself unfelt and unknown to the frenzied woman. Breathing its viperous breath, the powerful snake becomes her twisted necklace of gold, becomes the loop of her long ribbon, knots itself in her hair, and roves slithering down her limbs. Just gets so wild. And the last thing I wanted to show you guys, which we've talked about numerous times on the channel, but is one of my favorite stories recently, is about the goddess Muta, right? Or Tacita, the goddess of silence, who is this kind of DK-like figure of justice, who has her tongue ripped out, and then she's cast into Hades.
Oh, so that's what Tacitus is named after.
Yep. The goddess of silence. It says, at once you will ask of me, who is the goddess Muta, the mute? Hear what I learned from the old men gone in years, conquered by exceeding love of Juturna. Jupiter submitted to many things which so great a god ought not to bear. For now she would hide in the woods among the hazel thickets. Now she would leap down into her sister waters. The god called together all the nymphs who dwell in Latium. And thus in the midst of the troop he spake aloud. Your sister is her own enemy, and shuns that union with the supreme God which is all for her good. Pray look to her interests and not into mine. For what is a great pleasure to me will be a great boon to your sister. When she flees, stop her on the edge of the bank, lest she plunge into the water of the river. He spake. Assent was given by all the nymphs of the Tiber and by those who haunt Leela divine, thy wedding bowers. It chanced there was a naiad nymph, Lara, Laurentia, the mother of Lares. This is the same as the goddess Muta, the one who's creating these daimonic spirits, right? The Lares are the same as the agathodaimons, the good spirits. You know, these are the spirits in your home. Okay. What did she say? Lara by name, but her old name was the first syllable repeated twice. The first syllable repeat, Lala, the barbarous word. She is literally Lala. Her name has no meaning. She's beyond comprehension, right? She is that frenzy itself. Again, connecting us to that Nicocastra, connecting us to Themis, connecting us to Heskia. So many of these goddesses all start interconnecting here. Okay? So, what does it say? This first syllable repeated twice, and that was given her to mark her failing. Many a time Almo had her, my daughter, hold thy tongue, but hold it she did not. No sooner did she reach the pools of her sister Juturna than, "Fly the banks," said she, and reported the words of Jupiter. She even visited Juno, and after expressing her pity for married dames, "Your husband," quoth she, "is in love with the Naiad Juturna." Jupiter fumed and wrenched from her the tongue she had used so indiscreetly. He also called for Mercury. "Take her to the dead land," said he. "That's the place for mutes. A nymph she is, but a nymph of the infernal Mars she'll be." The orders of Jupiter were obeyed, and on their way there came to a grove. Then it was, they say, that she won the heart of her divine conductor. He would have used force for want of words, she pleased with the look, and all in vain she strove to speak with her dumb lips. She went with child and bore twins, who guard the crossroads and keep watch in our city. They are the Lares. So, just some wild stuff I wanted to end with, and to show you this tongue imagery. And the speaking of the dragon tongue sometimes is this bringing of justice, right? It's calling out that Zeus, right, in the face of destruction. Just wild stuff.
That's crazy. You
it
brought
was
so
said that
much
Isaac-
that tied it all together. That was so good. Go ahead.
I was saying that Isaac Newton was obsessed with the fact that he saw that the Greek myths gave a lot of the answers for alchemy. When you start reading things like that and the different levels of meanings just within those few paragraphs that you could extract from that, I can quite see why he thought that.
Right?
You know,
So much
all of those
crazy.
characters are interacting with each other, polarizing with each other. There are things going on. You're entering into an underworld there and rising back up, and there are so many things going on that can be read into there.
Absolutely. So,
Oh, is this from my screen?
This is your screen.
Yeah, so I was looking at Colpost, right? And I was going down to we already saw this part. Also we saw that part. I don't think we looked at this one though. It says any bosom like hollow on this of the sea, first in the half literal sense of the sea goddess, and it says Thetis de Hupadaxato Colpo. So this sea goddess received him in her bosom. And that's from the Iliad.
This makes me think of Medea's Dark Harbor and of
Yeah,
the
that's what it
goddess
makes
of
me think
peace,
of.
right?
Yeah.
So I've been reading Apuleius's Lucius, and at the very end, one of the things he does is
Oh my God, it's Bacchus.
he enters into this harbor, and they say it's the harbors of Hestia, peace, which is the daughter of decay, but also quiet, going
Wait a
back to
minute.
Tacita and Muta again.
This is the
Yeah,
only
and-
time. This is the only reference to Bacchus in the Iliad, and this is what it says. He did it. It was that drove the nursing women who were in charge of frenzied Bacchus through the land of Nisa, and they flung their thyrsi on the ground as murderous Lycurgus beat them with his ox goad. Bacchus himself plunged terror-stricken into the sea, and Thetis took him, Bacchus, into her bosom. Bacchus is going into the bosom of Thetis in this. I didn't even know this until right now.
And Bacchus is that serpent, right?
Right.
Oh
We
my
just
gosh.
This is insane. This is insane. I gotta this is too much. So this is like some secret. Last time I saw this passage was a while ago, and I remember thinking to myself, what does this have to do with anything in the story? But I think Homer is slipping in some secret cultic shit right here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's such a good find.
Yeah.
Wow, guys. So I finished my presentation. Dion unfortunately had to bail.
Yeah, mine was just throughout the show. I was just throwing stuff in there. That's all I had to do.
We loved it. We loved it. And Ryan, you gave an amazing presentation. So let's just wind down here. So guys, what did you take away from this entire discussion this evening? What are your thoughts on Dragon Tongue?
Well, I can't believe how widespread it's spread out throughout these sources, that there's just so much of it interconnected to each other. Like that last passage we just found in Homer's Iliad randomly, where you have Bacchus just randomly getting taken into the bosom of Thetis. And like
The
that, and
snake
we
in
didn't.
the
I would not.
goalpost,
I
man.
would not have known what to do. And that he uses the word "colpos" too. I would not have known what to do with that verse unless we did what we just did right now.
That's the power of the muse, right? Had we just saw that in Perseus, we never would have even thought
I
twice.
just pulled that up just now. Yeah, I didn't even know about that.
How about you, Ryan? What's
For
your
me,
take?
I think it goes back to the fact that, it's serpent knowledge, it's the dragon knowledge, it's the dragon lineage of knowledge. And once you get that it's this weather god and it's the energy from the beginning of time, wherever it goes, it makes sense. If it's going in the drugs, it's because that's the power in the drugs. What does the power in the drugs do? Well, it can take you beyond time to that ionic realm, or it can give you strength in time and work on the intellect and things like that. But going back to the last thing you were talking about, Snappy, which was this silence, this muter, or it's going to that ionic realm through these quiet places internally. That's what that's getting at. Do you get that from it as well?
Absolutely, because this is about, when you get into this silence stuff, okay, I started reading. So number one, the silence Tacita is related to natural law and just the way things are. And it's almost like this Roman version of the Tao. I started reading into the biography of Numa by Plutarch. And Numa took a 5-year vow of silence. And after the 5 years, he meets Tacita and he installs her as the main muse. And he builds a temple of the muses, but without images. They use instead a sign related to this charketeres stuff because they say her name is ineffable. It's the barbarous words, right? Ovid says it's Lala, right? And so you can't actually say this, but so Numa's involved with this stuff. And she's this founding energy at the beginning of Rome. And it also has to deal with this flight of the people who are coming, Pelasgians. So this girl is related to a bunch of different figures, Basileia, but she's also related to the queen of the Pelasgians, who is forced to leave and escape to Rome. And then she becomes this prostitute, the mother of wolves. When you look at it, that in the Latin, the word for it, for prostitute, it's not a wolf. It means prostitute. It's like a pun. They basically say that prostitutes are bitches. And she has all this power and money. She gives birth to the twins, founds Rome. And then she becomes the secret muse of Numa, the second ruler after Romulus.
So what I want to say is every time from these, Sabazios, Dionysus characters, whatever it is, these dragon people or these things associated with the dragon are getting an energy together to put out into manifest into the world, whatever that'll be for political reasons. It might be, if you're a magician type, it might be the energy in your body. It might be the preparation of some drugs. It might be the initiation of somebody new into your clan or the continuation of a lineage. Whatever it is, it's, even if it's in Kundalini and stuff like that, it's the harnessing of an energy like the ass. It's the harnessing of a primal energy and putting into something to make it happen. My God, that's literally the definition of magic, is it not?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But there's so much wildness going on here, and all of this, it relates to these rites about creating these godmen somehow and giving birth to new civilization, finding this muse that can allow for these new ions to be born. That Babylon magic,
Babylon, it's that
one more thing
glossolalia, isn't it? Again,
before we
that
go,
almost chaos magic element to it. That
absolutely.
In the end, they might be using again time to govern the magical operations, but there's this chaos element to it all the time, which is that glossolalia, that the Christian nut jobs probably in your part of the world, Neil. But talking absolute nonsense. But
they do that
within that, you're getting hold of the subconscious. You're making a connection there. You're kind of short in a circuit and able to get to these silent places that are these trance states these drug
Right.
states.
And that's where the wormholes are, the snake holes, where you can connect to these deities through those demonic agents, and you can be inspired by the muse, right?
So I wanted to check this out before we go. So this is what it says right here in this inscription at Delphi. We don't. There's no way I can click on it. It's just telling us that there's an inscription in Delphi that says Despoinos hupo kolpon. Now, if we look up, give me 1 second. I'm gonna show you something real quick. If we go to Despoina, there's a lot going on here. That lady. So the bosom of the lady, it says. And that's what it translates. Despoina hupo, the bosom of the great lady, or the bosom of the highest lady. Hupo means highest.
This Despoina, though, goes back. So I was looking into this Tacita.
It goes back all the way to Proto-Indo-European Linear B, as far back as we know. Minoan. Why not?
But Neil, get this, okay? When I'm looking into Tacita, what is her name in Etruscan? Turana.
Turana.
Where we get the word for tyrant.
Right.
But we just saw, again, where we get the name for despot.
We just saw
Despot,
in Homer.
yeah, Despot.
We just saw in Homer that Bacchus was put into the bosom of Thetis in the water. Then you have an inscription at Delphi, I don't even know what the date of it is, and it says all it says is in the bosom of the highest Despoina lady. So, and then you look up Despoina, and there's all these statues, archaic statues of the Cori. Remember we talked about the Cori, the birth of Ion?
Yep.
And these connections are still piling in. We're closing the show out. We're not even close to scratching the surface on this thing. That's what I'm basically trying to say right now. Look,
we're on hour 4. We're on hour 4, Neil.
There's Thetis right now. It's the sea goddess right there.
Oh, Melusine. Yeah, the Melusine. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I was talking about Melusine before, yeah.
This is nuts.
This
dude.
is why we have planned, Dion and I, at least to do 2 more episodes, because Dion has an entire another presentation.
Yeah, I'll bring all this next time.
On the Asian stuff. I have more stuff. Neil will have more stuff. Now we're inspired. And I'm sure, Ryan, you'll have
I'm going to find that inscription.
Oh, I got more.
I'm going to find that inscription about Despoina Hupos Kolpos.
Please. That's so amazing.
I want to see what it looks like.
We'll be back next week with more stuff. But guys, before we end it, what are you guys up to? We'll start with Ryan. What do you have in the works? Anything new you'd like to promote? What's going on with your channel?
I'm about to do the first episode of The Secret Science in quite a while, because we keep talking about martial arts, and I thought that would be a good way to demonstrate a lot of metaphysics. And I started writing my book again, so maybe just after Christmas that'll be done.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to your book. Keep us posted when you have more info. Neil, what are you up to? What do you got in the works?
The video that I'm almost done with, that'll be out in a couple days, is the video about all the festivals that are happening around this time of the year, the Samhain stuff, the Phasmophoria, all that stuff, all that good fall equinox, harvest moon festivals. They're so widespread in the ancient world. Some of these cultures, the Germans, the Germanics, Celts, celebrated their New Year's around this time of the year. Absolutely. So this was a very special time of the year for a lot of these ancient cultures.
Oh man, I'm so looking forward to that. And you had dropped hints about this video potentially doing one on inscriptions. Are you still going to do
That's another one? And then I have the Dark Ages script that I've been writing for months.
Right.
That one will come when it's ready. I'm working on that one slowly.
You got to be serious about that one, because you will get pushback. So.
Oh yeah, I'm going hard on that one. I'm bringing so much shit. Yeah.
So Ryan's channel is in the description below. It's Ryan71111. Okay, if you want to search for him. All right, everyone. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. Last words, Ryan?
Cryptology, underpants, bus stop.
Amazing. Any last words, Neil?
Hail Satan.
All right, everyone. Hail Satan. Peace and love. And I'll see you guys next week for more Occult Exploration Society. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This was great. And let's send love to Dion, who unfortunately had to leave. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Peace.